We'll just do this. Okay, we're going on here real fast. Hi! It's gonna be a second because I forgot to set up sound on the overlay. So y'all bear with us for just another minute. Okay.
Ahoy hoy, and
Cone of
welcome to the channel.
silence.
Is silence? I thought silence was a square. Hold on. Now.
All right, y'all ready?
Oh, it's a sphere.
It
Oh
used to
wait,
be
we're
Cone
on
of
it.
Silence.
Yay! Okay,
Yeah, no,
great.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah.
I
I've heard
forgot
Cone
that
of
it was
Silence
out of
before.
studio mode.
Oh wait, are we on again
We're
now?
on. Yeah.
Oh,
We're live. Hello.
We're talking about Cone of Silence. Ahoy hoy.
We're talking about old school second edition. But Goblin, there's no goblin on
Yeah,
my
I'm working
screen.
on that. I wanted to
Okay.
go ahead and get us going.
Okay.
It's gonna be messy for a minute, y'all, because
We have to teleport our goblin in.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This isn't a normal episode. This is just us sort of hanging out and talking about the previous episodes. So
We're also talking about the polyhedral shapes of silence.
sure,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What shape does your silence take?
Wait a minute. Hold on. A
Wait,
sphere's
how
not a
cool would that be as
polyhedral.
a spell? If you or as a wizard subclass that could reshape the shape of spells.
Spell
Like if
sculptor
shape
sort of
spell
stuff. Yeah.
actually could transform
Yeah.
spells that were normally a cone or a sphere or a square or a cube into a different shape.
Ooh.
That feels like a good feat.
It could be a really good feat, but it also feels like it should be when you have shape spell, like for an evoker, it feels like it should be actually shape a spell.
Yeah.
Non-Euclidean shaper mage, yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we don't really have like a Far Realms influenced wizard yet.
I like
That
the
could
idea
be
of that. Like you could have a single, like you cast a fireball and you can cast it into one 20-foot radius sphere or two 10-foot radius spheres or something like
right.
that as a higher
Yeah.
level ability.
Yeah, like you have options to reshape, literally reshape your spells.
Yeah. I like that as an idea, actually. That seems like that could be a
I also
fun.
love it started as a meme, but then it became like, oh, there are so many options for this, the change one letter of a spell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've
And
seen
there are
those.
so many good ones that I was like, oh, this actually should be a subclass. I have a because I'm a literary nerd, I have a whole thing around I have a few different things around word
I like
nerd stuff.
Word nerd.
Word nerd.
Jen,
hot.
real quick,
Goblin. Yeah.
completely off topic.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of a musical called Something Rotten?
Of course.
I have just learned of this and am
It is
delighting in it.
delightful.
It is
Yes, it's
it's good.
delightful.
Yeah,
It's an excellent show. It's
I just had to
hilarious.
ask.
Yes. If the question starts, Jen, have you ever heard of a musical called
It's
Odds Are? The answer is yes.
it's
Odds are.
it's a good
And I
point.
haven't heard of everything, but I have a very because I used to go to a performing arts camp where we did 60 full-length musicals a summer. So they
Holy
had to come up
shit.
with 60 full-length musicals to
Wow.
do every summer. So we were on like a 4 to 6 year cycle on most of those, with new shows coming into the mix. And it was with a full orchestra, full pit, like yeah, it was if
That's
anyone wonders when I started learning how to be a professional, it was when I was 12 years old
that's
and was
wild.
working very serious. It's a place called
60
Frenchwood's
different
Festival. 60 different shows.
How many
And
how
for
the
a
many
campers
12-year
range,
old?
yeah, the campers range from 7 to 17. And
about how
it's now 10 weeks, but when I went it was 9 weeks. And I have friends from there who many of whom are still professionals on Broadway, on TV. It's called Frenchwood's Festival of Performing Arts. Look it up if you want to. You can look on YouTube and see some of their shows. You can see their production of Les Mis. Um, you can see the level of talent and effort that goes into it. And it changed my life. It's probably the single most formative experience of my life. I'm still super close with a bunch of people from camp.
Aw.
It was life-changing for me. And
Yeah.
I actually worked on a production of She Kills Monsters during lockdown with my mentor from camp. But yeah, it's in upstate New York and in the most beautiful place, and I was so lucky to get to go there. I recognize how privileged I was to get to go there.
That's so
Um,
cool.
and it absolutely changed my life. And we have a bunch of really amazing alums, and yeah, I can't, if you have the opportunity to help send someone there who's interested in the it's arts, so it's musical theater, straight theater, circus, rock shop, magic, dance, music, uh extreme sports, so skateboarding, BMX, they have full half pipes and everything, equestrian. I know I'm forgetting stuff. And D&D. That was my very, very first exposure to any D&D was at camp. They have a D&D elective and did back years ago. And they have the dungeon, and people get, that was the first time I ever heard of people actually playing it. And then that got my brother interested, which was how I had my first contact with someone who played at all regularly, and how I got my books that I now have from second edition. And I didn't start playing then. I didn't start playing for another 4 years, but that was really how I had my first contact with it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I
Yeah,
think
it
I
was-
had my first due to theater as well. My high school boyfriend. I am that horrible stereotype story.
It's look, I was too. It was my friend group, including my high school boyfriend. So
Yeah.
it's, I don't think there's any shame in that if your social group is what brings you
Yeah.
in. Like, there's no shame in being brought in.
Yeah.
And then I've brought in partners since. Like,
Yeah.
if you're passionate about something.
My boyfriend invited me because they had lost somebody from their group, and we both did theater. So, I mean, his reasoning tracks and makes sense. And I sat down and kind of looked over the book, and they asked me what I wanted to play. And I said, I think I want to be a healer, because you guys don't have a healer, do you? And they said, no. And I said, okay, yeah, I want to be a healer. So I was the quintessential healer girlfriend brought into the game, but it was by choice, which kind of amuses me. But then my second character was a fire mage who burned the shit out of everything. Coincidentally, named Mara. My character in Sumerian runs another game that's set in this same world, and we play every other Saturday night, and my character in that game is named Mara, and she's a grave cleric, and I love her. Oh, bless her heart. She's a mess.
I really...
Most amongst us does not play a hot mess in tabletop games.
I don't have like very much theater experience. Like the best I got is, of course, the high school. Like we had a senior play that every year was just people being silly and not really doing anything. Like it was always like a project that was supposed to get done, but no one ever really took a hold of it and made it into a real thing. So and I think this is not an entirely alien experience to people who are in theater. I was the guy that was finally like, no, we're gonna do a real play this year, and I ended up directing, starring, and basically ensuring it got produced with a lot of help from other people. But and then I think they went back to doing stupid skits the next year, but that's fine. We got it done.
Yay!
And God, we did 11 variations on Friar John's Failure. I also was in a play in junior high, The Wizard of Oz, where I played the Wizard of Oz. And that's about it theater-wise for me. I've always wanted to get into like acting in a more serious way, but I've never really bothered doing it.
Look, I will recommend acting classes, improv classes to anyone who's interested in tabletop games, but even writers, anyone who's doing anything creative. It just opens up
So many doors.
confidence.
Yeah,
It
to
helps
you.
you just become fearless. It helps you become more confident in yourself and your choices. um yeah, I think it's such a wonderful skill set to have.
Mhm.
So
Back in
um
2014, when I first started really writing for the SCP Wiki, one of the things I was, because for that exact reason, I was like, writing, I'm going to take some improv classes. And I ended up taking basically a semester's worth of, I cannot remember the name of the organization that did it off the top of my head, but I took about
Groundlings,
no, this was
IO.
down in, this is a very like, no,
Oh,
this wasn't officially associated with
it was a
anything.
local. Okay.
Yeah, it was a local thing. Um, in Birmingham, Alabama, somewhere. I don't remember what they were called, but we ended up we had fun. I learned a lot, but it was one of those things where it's like I didn't go back to doing it just because it was a lot of effort, and I've
Yeah. Improv
and
is so much harder than it
yeah.
looks. It's so
Oh
much harder.
my
People are like,
god.
oh, you just make stuff up. And it's
And I couldn't
so
resist
much
getting into
harder
the
than it
I
looks.
couldn't resist getting into the physicality of the
Mhm.
comedy,
Yeah.
and my body was not really in the, and not that at that time for sure, definitely not now, was not really designed for it. So I was like, I was taking tumbles and doing all sorts of stuff because I thought it would be funny, and I could not do it. As like when the opportunities arose, I was like, I got to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just an interesting experience, but I feel like it made me a better writer. It's made me a better, you know, DM for sure.
Yeah.
And that was around the time I started really like not necessarily getting into D&D, but it wasn't very shortly after that that I started getting into D&D
I,
in a
Because
uh,
like I
serious
look
way.
at you and I go, oh, you if that's the kind of impulses you have, like you could do Falstaff. Like that's the kind of stuff you could be
Oh,
working towards,
yeah.
right? Right?
Yes.
So there's like amazing characters that use that, but you certainly need to know how to do that without
Yeah.
hurting yourself, because
And even
there
when
is
you
a way
do,
to fall without injuring
yeah, yeah.
yourself, and it's important to learn that.
Even when you learn those skills and you can do that, it still takes a toll after a
Oh
while
yeah,
Mm.
for sure.
absolutely.
I definitely hurt myself multiple times. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's funny to
But
me
I think
afterwards.
the world of improv, I think, like the world of tabletop, has changed a lot since kind
Mhm.
of when
Yeah.
I was coming out of school and things. The improv was very much like the 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 guys who the frat guys.
Yeah.
That
Mm,
was the world of improv. It was similar to the stand-up scene at the time,
Yeah.
and it was very much a boys club. And that really, in a lot of ways, kind of deterred, I think, a lot of people from going in to take classes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
But
I like
now
the
it's
fact
very
that
different.
the improv that I did back when I was first starting in high school, I feel like that gave me a really good foundation and understanding of give and take
Yep.
that has served me so well in
Yes.
tabletop and gaming and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there are lots of different types of improv and improv
Mhm.
theories. Like there are schools of improv that will lead you toward writing sketches.
Yep.
There are schools of improv that will lead you toward more long form, like what's more important toward tabletop world. I mean, it all will help you if you're interested in doing tabletop, but
Yeah.
um that sort of world is really helpful. If you're a DM, the stuff that helps you build character and do character work, it can be really helpful. So it's sort of, if you're new to improv, kind of identifying the different theories around improv and which
Mhm.
schools of improv and types of games you're interested in playing, um, can be really helpful. This is suddenly turning into acting class. I don't know why
we
but
could,
yeah.
yeah,
It
we
it
can tie this into what
But I think
because
this is relevant stuff. I
yeah,
mean, when
yeah.
you're
yeah,
talking about doing shows, I think that's it's important. And when
Mhm.
you're talking about people who do streams and stuff, a lot of us come from theater backgrounds and acting
Mhm.
backgrounds. Not everybody, but a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason that that happens. One is the performance aspect, is we're comfortable being in front of an audience and things, but the other is we're also just kind of, we have training to build characters and um create those things. I know this actually, Riv is sort of the least character-y character I've done in a very long time. Riv is the first character I've done in a long time that doesn't really have a big voice difference, though that may change down the line. I feel like I'm still settling into who Riv is in some ways, but compared to Alindra and Maeve, if you've seen the other stuff that I've done, you know, and just any of the one shots, like those tend to be much more broad or distinct characters with, you know, accents and voices and things, and Riv is sort of subdued comparatively, but it is a different voice and a different approach to choices and things. So I don't know, it's interesting.
So
It's always interesting to build
I
characters.
am that basic boozy bitch, and tonight I'm drinking out of my rhinestone Starbucks tumbler.
Fancy.
I'm feeling fancy tonight.
That's very fancy.
So
Do we want
sparkly.
to? Do we want to get into? Because I've moved you moved you to the map of the inside of the Kraken.
Yes.
So I talked about this in the last episode, but I think because now we've got other people here, we can talk with it a little bit more in depth. But this was the only part of the adventure where I was pretty much exactly sure what you guys were going to do. I mean, you're trapped inside the stomach of a kraken. You're gonna try and get out, and also there's a chest there, and you're D&D
Wait,
players.
the entire campaign isn't in the stomach of the Kraken?
I think we're still
No,
in the
I don't-
Kraken.
I mean, yeah, I think it could be.
I
Absolutely.
totally
We never
would-
left the
I would totally
Kraken.
do that. I would 100%
So it's some sort of like
put that
Sarlacc
twist
pit,
on it down the line.
some
Like
sort
you're
of
still in
Sarlacc
it.
pit bull crap, or like you wake up and you realize, oh my god, we're still here, and you're like strapped in, and there are tubes coming in and out of your head.
Well, no, I would be like you get to the edge of town and discover you're still inside. Like you're trying to leave and you
the
realize the
whole
entire
universe.
town.
This whole world exists.
Like
The whole
it
inside the
universe.
explains
Kraken.
Yeah.
why Baker Frog, why
Yeah.
the eye was like. So I would have dropped stuff like that all throughout, and that would have been like maybe my big twist if I wanted to do an all in the Kraken campaign. Not that this is all I'm making this up on the fly. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I would
There-
do a weird twist like that.
So I moved your tokens over to the left-hand side so you guys could kind of see the lighting differences in here. Because when you're over here, it's actually a lot harder to tell. But there's a light source on the left-hand side of this map,
Oh.
as opposed to the right-hand side of the map. And
Right.
because it's it's not a small map, but if you're standing in the middle, your dark vision pretty much extends the entire stomach. But
okay.
if you were to like move over in this direction, you'd notice that it's dark towards the intestines and it's light towards the mouth.
Right.
As I
That's
moved
really
your
cool.
tokens around,
I
you
like
can
that.
see
That's a nice little touch.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Dynamic lighting. Yeah, well, the idea was I could have done a little bit better with it if I'd have drawn the lines around the stomach lining so you couldn't see outside of it, and it would channel the light in a beam instead of just being an emanated source.
Yeah.
But also in this, I remember when I loaded up this map at first because I knew I was gonna have you guys. Originally, I was gonna actually let you guys play a little bit on the ship in the first session, right?
Okay.
And then get eaten by a kraken. But my DM brain can't stand the idea of fully taking agency away from the players in that way.
Yeah.
Once the game is underway, I don't see it as the same thing when the game is like this is where your starting point is, right?
Okay.
But like giving you agency and then taking it away and then giving it back to you is it doesn't quite work for me. So I was like, I changed my mind. And of course we did that with sort of the session 0 stuff.
Yeah.
Where you guys did get to play on the ship a little bit. But then when we started the game, I'm like, no, they're going to get eaten as the start of the game. And then start in the stomach, and then they just have agency for the whole rest of the game, right? Like this is the getting eaten by the Kraken is just your sort of you're finally awake from Skyrim sort of moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. I thought that was a great start to the game. Oh, welcome, you're on your ship. Things are happening, and you're being eaten. What do you look like?
Yeah, starting in Media Res is always a fun choice. Like,
Yeah.
because it starts at an exciting place and you're engaged and
Mm-hmm. I just
Yeah,
always feel bad because I am the worst at describing a character. Like, I picture them, I know what they look like, I know who they are, yada yada. Well, not fully. I always develop a character as I go. Like, I have the
Yeah,
starting
me too.
idea, and then I start playing it and just kind of follow.
Yeah, I feel like I have a sketch and then
Yeah,
dimension gets added and color gets added and just like nuance and yeah, I
yeah,
feel like characters really change and I like to be able to backfill because I like to connect things
same.
as they happen and go, oh yeah, I had this thing happen in my past that makes it make sense. Like I like to or that makes it you know, just
Hi, Train. Thank you,
connected.
Bud.
Yay, thank you so much, Buzz.
Oh, yay. We
uh,
appreciate the subs, Buzz. If y'all got a gift sub from Buzz and you happen to be online, maybe throw him a thank you. That was very sweet.
one thing I rely maybe too heavily on, it's a skill I've been trying to develop as I go along as a DM, is physical descriptions of locations.
Mm-hmm.
I heavily rely on maps. I also heavily rely on tokens. Like anytime you guys run into a random NPC, I can do this. And for the sake of anyone who's not able to see the actual map here, I have a macro rollable table with 375 NPC tokens in it. So I just hit this button, bring up this thing here, and then go random side,
That's,
bam. I have an NPC. And then I can describe the NPC as I see it on the screen.
that's
Oh wow.
awesome. That's handy.
I can't see that, but that sounds really amazing.
It was a gray box for a while, and then
Oh,
Yeah, it
he
starts.
selected
Yeah,
something and it turned into a token.
oh, cool.
It was really
yeah,
neat.
it
I
takes
actually
from.
have tips on that.
Mhm.
I have two main tips on that. The first is if you can watch any movie, TV show with audio description on,
Oh,
that's huge. Audio description is under the audio settings, and that's what they use for blind low vision folks.
yeah.
And it will provide you ideas of quick because it has to keep up with the pace of the show,
Yeah.
but it has to be accurately describing and tonally describing the locations and actions and people in the scene and what's happening. So that's a really, really amazing tool to add to your toolbox. Also, it gets additional clicks on audio descriptions and encourages platforms to use them, which they should be doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a huge one. And then the second one is to think in terms of all of the senses. I write up all of my descriptions, and if I can remember to do it, my NPCs with all five senses.
Yeah.
Because it just adds dimensionality and thinking about what a place smells like or what a place, what the air tastes like or the texture of the air
Yeah.
is it just adds such
As a
nuance.
It almost gets visceral.
as a
It gets very
writer,
visceral.
Yeah.
as a writer, I have just because I know that smell is like the most memory linked
Connected
sense
to
that we
memory,
have.
yeah.
I often because I mean I'm my descriptions even in my writing are tend to be a little thinner, which is fine. Everyone's got their own style, but I will narrow in on a smell as the beginning of a scene. Because that's a good place to start. Then you can move into maybe other parts of the description if you need to. But a smell, yes, I very much agree with you there. That is something I try to hang the start of a scene on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people often rely very heavily on visual description in D&D and in other tabletop games, and I think moving to other senses, particularly um, smell, taste, and touch. What does the ground feel like? What does the air smell like?
Mhm.
What do things taste like? Is it acrid? Is the air acidic? Because you taste the salt in the air. You can when you go to a place, there is
Yeah.
that sense. Um, those are senses that I think add a whole other dimension to the storytelling. Particularly when you have things that go onto podcasts and stuff. Like it just adds so much more that I really I try and add the make a little grid for myself for every description, every location to have those spelled out. And sometimes I'll add a sixth sense of like, what is your actual sense of the place? You know, does it make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up? Does it, do you feel comfortable? It's just like, what's the vibe
Yeah.
of the place?
Location vibe check.
Yeah.
This map specifically, I was mentioning earlier how much I liked it because it's got so many different elements that I love. But more importantly, that chest gives me so many opportunities because I
Yeah.
know for a fact you guys are going to go for it one way or the other. But the fact that there's a chest in the scene, and also that demonstrates to the players immediately, and maybe even the audience, that details in a scene are not just set dressing. They matter,
Yeah.
right? That's a chest. You see a chest. Is there something
Yeah.
in that chest? Yes, there is something in that chest. Originally, that chest was going to contain the journal entry as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe it was you, Dominique, or sorry, Katie.
Yeah.
You went to go investigate the little cutlass to the sort of center north of the map.
I saw the chest first.
You did,
I
but you
did,
did.
and then I
Yeah,
saw
you.
the cutlass.
Yeah,
Because big chest, I felt like that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
something Dominique would be like.
Absolutely. But you investigated that, and I was like, no, I'm gonna take it out of the chest, and I'm gonna basically again reward somebody for being curious by going to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so then they gave you the journal entry from there. And when we went to the chest, there was the now you guys know the fragment of the god prison that ended up dissolving and bringing back some skeletons.
I'm sure it's
And
fine.
and a potion of radiation immunity, which you guys did not know at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the idea of like just having 4 or 5 bottles of the same potion in the box, even though that would have
Yeah.
been fine. So I was like, I'm just gonna make it a big old flask that has multiple doses.
Yeah. Which I loved.
Not something you see a lot in D&D, and I
Yeah.
think it could be used more. But there was that. I the skeleton encounter was always going to happen. So I could tell you,
Yeah.
again, this is behind the scenes stuff. That skeleton encounter at the very beginning was always going to happen. They always had just 1 hit point. They were always going to be very easy for you guys to deal with. Just because I feel like it's a little cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, I think.
Yeah.
Is starting a game off with a very easy, simple combat to get the players not just into their characters, but into the mechanics of their characters as well can be very useful. I didn't fully. I should have. This is one of the things where it's like you see the things happen and then you don't realize that you probably should have predicted that. When you guys started to basically go Nova because you were worried that the skeletons were going to kill you, and I was like, oh no, these are very easy to kill skeletons. Don't use all your abilities, please. There might be more later. I don't know. I didn't
know what
have
you guys are gonna do.
I didn't have like any major combats planned up to the point where you guys would maybe but I didn't know what you guys were going to do when you met the bandits on the beach later.
Yeah.
So like you might have wanted to fight them, and that would have been a difficult fight with all of them there.
Yeah.
Although Frog in a Wizard Hat and the other bullywugs would have helped you out. I also didn't know if you were which side you were going to take. I mean, obviously you guys, I have a pretty good idea of which side you were going to take in the little encounter there, but yeah. So you guys come in here and you guys do this, and of course the lighting should incentivize you to go out the mouth side. And the map also the map is actually built in. It has a block. Let me move it over because I don't think currently it can be seen from the lighting. But there's a block on the intestines part where there's like half of a boat covering it up, so that also kind of disincentivizes it. It's just like a perfect map for starting.
It was great, yeah.
So many elements that I can control here. I'm gonna move you guys to the. Oh nope, that has been updated. Where's the?
Oh god.
I'll actually show you something in a second.
Buzz Lightyear was saying his first encounter that he ran for a game, he went off a random table and got 3 mind flayers for a party of level 1 players.
Oh,
The friendliest of mind flayers who wanted to come in and just hug
that
party.
is probably how you have to handle that unless you want to TPK them. I mean,
suddenly it's mind flayer tea party.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friendly mind flayers in this world, so
Yeah. That creeps me out, but I'm here for it at the same time. I love them as a villain. I think they are terrifying.
Yeah, they can very much be terrifying. But I also love the idea of you guys have probably already noticed this of me, but I love the idea of inverting those sorts of expectations.
Hmm.
Like if you run into a mind flayer, I would much but then again, sometimes inverting expectations that much, like that often and repeatedly, sometimes subverting the expectation is playing it straight for once
Yeah.
and like giving you the monster that you expect you're going to get. So but I very much like to do the stuff with like, oh, friendly mind flayers. That's definitely my vibe for sure.
Yeah.
um oh, we didn't talk a little bit about like the one of my mistakes. Let's talk about my mistakes because this is a good place for that. Was not considering how um not obsessed is not the right word, but
Excited.
concerned you would
Ah.
be about Captain Grug Grimtooth's fate. Captain Grug Grimtooth was a character you guys had met in the session 0
Mm-hmm.
briefly, but you'd been introduced to him. You knew he was your teacher and everything. And something that I hadn't planned properly for was that you guys would spend about 30 minutes to maybe even 45 minutes
Yeah.
trying to figure out where he'd went.
Yeah.
And some of that was mixed in with other stuff, but you always kept circling back around to it. And that was definitely a failure on my end as a DM.
No, I don't think that was a failure. I think that
No,
was
I don't think so
a
either.
new information that you adopted and ran with immediately.
Well,
Well,
and as
go ahead.
students, it makes sense that we would look for the
Yes.
person in the leadership role who knows where to go and
Absolutely.
what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
if he's dead, we should know that, and if he's not,
Yeah.
we should find him and go.
Yeah.
From a
So I
narrative
think,
perspective, what my
but
my
I
point
don't,
is, I think
but I
at
don't.
some point you guys should have had the information, right?
Oh,
Like,
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Not that the spending 10, 15 minutes on you guys worried about Captain Greg Grimtooth is great from your character's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But from a narrative perspective, I didn't give you guys useful information in game that could give you the conclusion to be like, we should move on and find him later. Like I did with
Okay.
Abelina flying away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Stuff
And
like
that makes
that.
I see what you're saying there, and that clicks. Basically, giving us a heads some sort of clue or nudge that
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to handle this here.
Right.
Proceed, and all will
Yeah.
be revealed, kind of thing.
But it also was the first session, and
Yeah.
you weren't familiar with how we tend to fixate on things and
Mhm.
what we tend to fixate on, and we weren't familiar with what is important to you
Yeah.
or what you use to kind of use as hooks and things. So I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was us just all sort of figuring out how we all work
Yeah.
too.
I think that's fair. I still personally will consider it an error, for lack of a better way to put it. But I do want to. I want to. I'm not saying it is like it's a bad thing or
Yeah.
like a huge issue. I'm bringing it about because I think people who are watching might think that every DM knows what's going to happen in every situation. I think it's good to bring about like this is something I didn't consider and that I personally think I could have done better.
Yeah.
I think
And-
it's much more common that DMs don't know what
Yeah,
is happening.
that's true. But
Genuinely,
people who yeah, that's true.
it's
It's
much
a
more
learning
common that your
moment.
players will catch you off guard
Yeah.
with something when you think you have prepared for absolutely every possibility. Your players will do something you don't expect, and that's the norm to
Yeah.
me.
It is, but people who want to start DMing, I feel like they look at a game and
I
they
think
don't
that's
realize
normalizing
that.
it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to say this
Mhm.
happens to everybody, like
Mhm.
expect that you will think you are prepared for everything and your players will do something you don't expect.
Yeah.
That's like
I
my
think
very
we're
first
all
time
saying
DMing.
the same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. At this point,
my
we
very
are.
first time DMing, I prepared for 3 months. I had handouts, I had maps of the city, I had music for every single temple of every single god. Like I thought I was stacked. We were playing a game where we were handing off DM roles.
Mhm.
What they didn't tell me was that the DM before me was going to blow up the previous town, and that we would have blown up the 3 previous towns.
Oh,
And so they get there and they ask for the town council. And I was not prepared with a town council. And
That's
I
fair.
literally said, "Oh, they're off on a retreat." Like, I did not know what to do. Second one of my first time DMing.
Mm.
oh wow.
And that set me up to know that I will never know what is coming as a DM. Like, I just have to be prepared that I won't ever be ready for it.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's the fun of the game,
Yeah.
is working with your players and the push-pull of it.
It's
Speaking
that
And I
whole
actually got to a
idea-
place in that game where I had to take my players aside and be like, "Listen, I had no clue we were going to be coming from here. I am not at all prepared for this. So just assume that they're going to be back in 3 days, and you've got 3 days to run around town doing whatever you want until they
Mm.
come back, and then
Yeah.
we'll go from there." Because otherwise, I have to wipe the entire adventure I spent the last 3 months working on.
Oh god.
But yeah, so as a first-time DM, that was how I handled it. But
Yeah.
now I would handle it very differently. But
Speaking of being prepared,
yeah.
I don't know if you're watching the stream and you can see this. I know, but Katie,
Mhm.
this is the new map. If you guys were to ever come back to this island of what the Kraken looks like now.
Wait,
Good
hang on. I want to
Lord,
see
I
this.
love it. Yes.
Oh.
Hang on, chat, and I will.
Oh, yeah. Oh, whoa. Cool.
Okay, we have to go back because I want to drink at that bar. Because you
Yeah.
know there's going to be a bar built in.
That's
Yeah.
gonna smell so bad.
It's
Why would you
is.
build a town on top of a rotting carcass?
All right, but this is a special kind of monster.
Oh,
And while I hadn't considered the fact that it would smell really bad, I'm gonna say that I don't think that Krakens rot.
Oh.
I do love, somebody just asked in Buzz just asked in chat if it has a swim up bar, and I think it needs to. I think
Something
it
like
needs
that.
to.
Yeah. I
Swim
don't
up
know
three,
if this
three,
is...
three Dragonanti.
Yes.
I don't know if the map. I don't think there's an iteration that's more developed than this, but I could definitely see there being like
look at the bottom, like
Oh yeah, it looks like they're building. I mean, obviously they're building on it. It's not finished,
Yeah.
but yeah.
like you
This
you
is
have
the-
a great floor space for a bar that you could
So
swim
this
up
is
to right
the
there.
this is the dock that the bigger frog was saying he was building for you guys. So this is where you guys would
Aw.
be docking at.
Bigger frog is the best. See if I
But
can
let's
get
move you
it,
back
so-
to the
Yeah,
move
there
you
we-
back to the regular Kraken
Wow.
map.
That's wild.
I love it.
Yeah, I prepared. I was mid session when I was talking about that, and I went into my files and was like, okay, where's the? Because I knew this existed. I'd looked at the Kraken map before,
Yeah.
so I was like, all right, let's find it and put it on, just in case they decide to go back.
The ignore the smell docs.
Uh,
They hand out nose plugs at the gates.
I feel like there's got to be some sort. It's not going to be like rotting like flesh all the time, but there's definitely some sort of like, I don't know.
The town lives on top of a giant frog island. I think their olfactory senses are probably used to weird smells.
How dare you? That's so mean to
Amazing.
frogs. But yeah, so you guys come out here and you talk to Cassandra and Reginald.
Mhm.
And this is an NPC. Here, I'll blow the token up just for the people to see a little bit better. This is literally just an NPC created out of I saw a token that looked cool and I felt like it needed to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
What the little detail, and this is a Greek force. Oh, we should talk about the credits for the people who did these things. Let me get my file open for that. We forgot to because we were
They're
just
coming
doing
through
a
in
discussion
chat,
of it.
so everyone is
Yeah.
being credited.
That's fair. But I still like to say it out loud at least once. But cartography by Shane Peku, cartography by Shane Peku Sci-Fi, map by Luke Stratton, Eightfold Paper, music by Tabletop Audio, and character tokens by Greek Force 6. This is another Greek Force 6 token. I love these tokens and the character that each of them has. And the thing about this one that caught me more than anything else was when I'm not looking at it, like when I wasn't zoomed in on it originally when I very first looked at it, I didn't realize that the frog was the one smoking the pipe. And that little detail is like, oh, that gives me so many character like in my head character
Yeah.
ideas.
I love Reggie.
Yeah. And then of course I knew I wanted a Frog of Holding because I
Yeah.
thought that would be like I always like to give any game I have. I feel like if you're holding back on a bag of holding on your players in the beginning, you're just it's annoying. I get it, but especially if they start at like level 3, right? Or
Yeah.
any higher than that. Um like you're just asking for inventory management issues, which are not fun to
Yeah.
play generally.
Yeah.
Unless that's like there are games that's the style for, but that's not most games. And a bag of holding is just a simple solution that solves most of those issues, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I had a
Um,
DM who gave us we were allowed to buy a used bag of holding, which had glitter in it.
oh
Like it had
God.
leftover glitter that would get
Oh,
all over your inventory.
that's
And
great.
so
I
you
love
just could,
that
it was
so
so
much.
good. It was so good.
Can
Like
was
it was
that
just
was
such
that
a
on a
belief.
stream or
It was a home game,
okay?
That's
but it was
amazing.
yeah.
I'm
So smart.
stealing that for later.
I will get you a name to credit, but it was
Yeah.
yeah, it was it's one of my favorite objects I've
Yeah.
ever had. It was a game with a bunch of writers who work on games, and
That's astonishingly good. I
yeah,
love that.
the used bag of holding that we got at a discount, but the problem with it was it had glitter that you just could not get rid of, that just got all over your inventory all the
There's
time.
always more too. I bet
Love it.
that's just
And there's always
always
more.
more.
Yep. It was so much fun.
Um, so yeah, you guys come out here, and there was a lot of back and forth about Greg Grimtooth at this point, where you guys were, where's he at? Did you see him? They were talking to Cassandra. Of course, we then reintroduced Reginald. Dominique, you ended up getting a natural 20 on one of your interactions. Oh no, an insight check, I think it
Yeah.
was. And that just was like, I was in the moment. Originally, I was just gonna have Reginald like ribbit at you guys
Yeah.
for a really long time until maybe later on, some sort of magical way he would be able to be understood by everybody.
Yeah.
Um, but in the moment, I realized that that joke had run thin after the first 5 or 10 minutes of it. It wasn't as funny to me after about 5 minutes as it was when I was doing all my prep for the game. So when you rolled that natural 20 on Insight, I was like, I think now you'd be able to
Yeah.
speak to
Yeah.
sort of move on from that joke. Because the original joke, like I had a I, I get lines of dialogue that go through my head sometimes when I'm thinking about a character.
Mm-hmm.
And for these guys, it was something like Cassandra's line was, um, when I first came to this island, I was a beautiful young princess. And now look what's happened. And like, oh, right. You have to be careful of the curses on this island. When I first came to this island, I was a beautiful young princess. And now look at me. And then he was just going to go, ribbit. But his ribbit was, really? Why are you lying to these people? Um, and that was a funny joke, and that was the line of dialogue that really gave me the idea of who these characters were.
Yeah.
That's usually how I do it. It gave me an idea who these characters were, but then I got so hung up on the ribbit thing, and which was funny. I feel like was funny for a good while there, but at some point I was like, no, he's got to be able to talk, or else this is going to get old real quick. Um, and then I was like, I didn't actually have originally a voice in mind for Reginald, fully. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm just gonna do a bad David Mitchell impression, who's a British comedian fella,
Yeah.
who's kind of very posh sounding, um, and just go from there. Anytime I have a character, actually, this is a good point to do this. Uh, Katie,
Yeah.
if you go over to your journal,
Yeah.
and I think you should be able to have access to this. If you go down to the NPCs, go to students.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Gotcha.
Okay. Students.
Yeah. If you click on Charles Moriarty,
Yeah. Pulls up
you
his
should be able
character
to
sheet.
open up his character sheet. Can you hit the edit? Is there an edit button at the top right?
Yeah.
Okay. Go to that, and then at the bottom, hit edit token properties. It's a lot harder for you to do this. I can just double click, but you might even be able to
Gotta
double
figure out
click
which
too.
one it is. Hang on.
It's below the second portrait at the bottom.
I've
Because you
got
know you get
use selected token.
Is that all you can see on your screen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay, hold on. I'll just describe it to you guys. So I was hoping that you'd be able to see the actual token thing.
I think I probably have to have DM privs to change that
It
stuff.
very well may be the possibility. See if you can check. So when you click the Charles Moriarty token now, you should be able to control it fully. Can you? Do you have like a gear at the bottom when you click it? It's on the map
Let
now.
me reload it, just to check. I do not have a gear on the Charles Moriarty.
That's fair enough.
Edit
All right.
screen.
So on my screen, when I double click it, I get details, GM notes, and dynamic lighting options for the characters because each one of the tokens is treated like it's a character or a token that can be a monster of some kind. So on my GM notes section, I have, and this is information I feel perfectly fine sharing with you guys. It's got Charles Moriarty, Halfling Scribes Wizard, age 23, shy and curious. Those are his like main personality
Descriptors.
traits.
Yeah.
And then a voice of Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings, which isn't it like too special, right? It's just there's a little bit of a lilt to his voice.
Yeah.
And then so it's not very hard for me to get to. He's got friends as Thalric and Wilhelm. He's got romantic relationships. Is target of crush from Elizabeth Windrucken. Rivals Prince Hespera, and hometown of Galfast, and then role student. I have all of these pieces of information for every single NPC that you see in that list on the journal, which I think there's almost 60 at this point. And so people like Cassandra and Reginald have the same similar. That I'm giving you Charles Moriarty because that's the one that you as characters are the most familiar with.
Yeah.
And let me just double check on Cassandra here. Yeah, I've got Cassandra and Reginald on this one specifically. And none of her voice. So when I say voice necessarily, I'm not even necessarily talking about like the voice I do. Although that does enter into it sometimes. It's more like you're the character you're inhabiting. Like you don't have to necessarily do their voice in order to be like that sort of up. You know, I'm up here. I'm my stance has changed. My posture has improved, and now I'm trying to be this character.
Yeah.
Every single one of those, I tried to pick out a character that I was familiar with enough that I could do that with. But Reginald, I didn't have a plan for originally necessarily. He was just kind of going to be a frog of holding that ribbited at you all the time. But by giving him a voice, I had to fully flesh him out as a character on the fly.
Yeah.
And so this is my thing. I improvise a lot of the stuff that goes into the game, but I also have a large cache of prepared content.
Yeah, you do.
That to fall back on, to give me a basis to what to improvise. For example, like in a lot of cases, Charles Moriarty's is very specific, where it says is target of crush by Elizabeth Windrucken.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just says in a relationship with, or or with rivals, and that's all I've included, and I haven't thought about it much more than that, like a little bit maybe, but not much more than that, because that gives me the opportunity for like when Reginald and Big Frog later on, we'll talk about that a little bit more, when Reginald and Big Frog were conversing, and it seemed pretty clear that Big Frog was that's Meg Frog, the bigger frog with the flower on her head, seemed like she didn't like Reginald. And you guys picked up on that immediately and started following that thread. That was not fully planned necessarily, but that is very similar. So in the moment, I decided to make her just be kind of cold towards him. Like she's this really friendly, oh my God, hi, it's so nice to meet you character. And to have her just be cold to somebody a little bit was, an outstanding thing. And of course, you guys picked up on it immediately. And then I had to start developing it. But with other characters that just have in a relationship, generally, or is a rival to, that's generally how it works for me. I have that base level. And then once you guys start investigating to figure out what's going on, I'm like, okay, let's move this from a base level rivalry or base level romantic relationship to what is the details of that particular relationship in that way.
Yeah.
And I did have an idea of Cassandra and Reginald's relationship to each other. That part I knew because obviously I had to. The frog is on Cassandra's head.
Yeah.
And so you guys, came out here and started talking to Cassandra and Reginald, which gave me immediately stuff to have to improvise, like with Reginald's voice and basically coming up with Reginald on the fly a little bit as a character, motivations, and his purpose.
Yeah.
His curse. I mean, it's easy to go to a frog cursed. You
Yeah.
know, if you're a prince or a noble of some kind cursed to be a frog, that was very easy for me to get to. But that was not necessarily planned from the beginning. That came out of just you guys interacting over time. So,
No.
but talking about that, we can move over to
On voice, can I throw something at
absolutely.
this too? I have a grid that I use. I use a lot of just kind of just because I can copy paste them, but I have 7 points I think that I note for my NPCs. I do tone, texture, pitch, pace, placement or positioning, dialect, and doppelgangers, which is what you're talking about, where it's a touchstone character. So I have those written down for NPCs, or I have that chart available should I have to make something on the fly, so I can remember for future coming back to that character if I have to invent an NPC. And that sort of is how I keep my NPCs in voices straight.
Yeah, I lucked out in that I'm using purely virtual tabletops here because literally I can just move the token on, double click it, and I have all that information I listed
the thing there,
yeah. So if you guys are like, I'd like to go talk to Logan, another student at the school, I just pull his token over, double click. I know who he is. I know his relationships. Good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use Notion or OneNote usually for my
How difficult is that to set up on the back end? How much effort?
Well, I wouldn't say it's more than the 60 or so NPCs. Oof. I don't want to say. I mean, it's a long process that takes place over multiple days, but it's not like it needed to take. If I wanted to did like dedicate it to it, I probably could have done it in about 12 to 12 hours, maybe.
Okay.
But then taking time in between also gives me time to think about it and change my mind about stuff as well.
You have to let things kind of simmer sometimes.
Yeah.
Fine.
Or like you get to that point where you're like, I don't want to be doing this right now. I need to go do something else.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna push myself and then like burn out on this. I'm just gonna stop, go play a video game, go listen to some music, talk to some friends, and then come back to it afterwards. But yeah, if I'd push,
also then you can base them on your friends, which is always fun. Or characters in your game. I can't tell you how many things I just pull directly from whatever TV show I'm watching, or you know,
I've been in a couple computer games. I was in there were 2 characters based on me in an MMO many years ago called Fallen Earth. And it was a fun game. A bunch of my friends worked on it, and so they put me in the game, and it made me super happy. But that's I don't know that there's been many inserts of me.
Let's move you guys to the cliffside exploration section. So you guys can't see it. Actually, I could just un-DM layer it for you. And it's actually going to be really small, so you're not going to see immediately what I just did. But
is it the 2?
It's the 2 I just added. So throughout the maps that you guys have been exploring, there have been marked locations that, and this is only like the 3rd map you explored, but there have been marked locations where if you guys come near it or decide to investigate it, that there would be a journal entry for you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So like you can see if I move this out of the way, hold on.
I'm just looking at the map. So
if you look where the 2 was,
yeah.
There's a little cubby hole there on the map, and it was just a good spot for me to do that with. Yeah. This is where you guys met Frog in a Wizard Hat.
I know.
Yes.
Which you guys
favorite.
You guys immediately.
I love the fact that Sumerian had no clue that Frog in a Wizard Hat was going to be such a big thing.
I mean, yes, 100%. The second that character was introduced, that immediately we all knew that was going to be the symbol of this show.
Snonky and Frog in a Wizard Hat. They are They are our babies.
And
And I
it's
just
fun.
uploaded the Snonky emote, so it will be coming up once
Yay!
it's approved.
Oh, that's awesome.
We briefly talked a little bit beforehand, just sort of pie in the sky stuff of like maybe one day we'll go to a convention and we'll dress up as our characters or something like that. And I'm like, I need to come up with an NPC that's easy to cosplay as. And I could just grab a wizard hat and be like, I'm me in a wizard hat. I don't know what
You
you're talking
could.
about.
I
Yeah.
am not gonna lie.
It's
I
it's
went on.
any of us in a wizard hat because Latia was Latia in a wizard hat this
Yep.
That's
weekend.
true. Yeah.
Can we? Can you share that story, or is that too personal? I don't know. I suppose don't, because I don't want to. The story about her in the elevator. I don't want to like
Oh,
create any weirdness.
it's I no, let's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't yeah, let's not.
There was a cute
Um,
story. That's
Um,
all I will say.
it's just Latia was in a wizard hat all over Gen Con this weekend, and that was
It's a
written up
thing.
in articles being described in her wizard hat. So yeah, it's delightful.
Yeah.
Latia in a wizard hat has been permanently enshrined in internet history as long as internet
Yep.
history actually lasts at this
I
point.
went on Etsy and looked at wizard hats because I am all for the idea of having a wizard hat and being Katie in a wizard hat.
Cast in a wizard hat.
Cast in a wizard hat. Yes. We all need wizard hats.
yeah, I went on Amazon looking at pricing them. I think I saw one for about $10 to $15. So yeah. So this is literally like all three of the types of names I'm willing to give characters all in one. I actually don't know if you can see their names, but I'm gonna click them and see here details.
Okay, yeah, I like the wizard hatters.
The Wizard Hatters.
That lurking writer just asked if that makes the viewers the wizard hat. Can we call ourselves the wizard hatters now? Yeah, I love that. That's adorable.
You're the Pab Hatters.
That is
Does
too
that work?
funny. The what?
Anyway, the
Yeah.
Pab Hatters.
That's
No,
cute.
so these three frog and bullywugs are basically all three of my types of names that I'll come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Boglep the Small, which is a very in-universe sort of name for a bullywug, and then Frog in a Wizard Hat, which is something that sounds silly but that conceivably makes sense depending on the culture that they come from.
Yeah.
And then Steve.
Steve. I
Um,
love giving characters and things in fantasy settings like very common modern names. I don't know why, but I love doing that. We had there was a god that we met in the Saturday night home game in this world, and he was the what was he, the observer or god of observation or something?
Oh, the
And
God of Narration.
god
Right,
of
yeah.
narration, and I called him Greg, and that has kind of stuck. He's Greg, god of narration.
Yeah, the
I
God of
think-
Narration.
I can't remember if it's Joe or maybe I think it's Joe, the God of Pockets. I'd have to go back and check my notes, but my God of Pockets in my universe is, I think, Joe, the God of Pockets.
I really
I'm
like the
gonna-
idea of a god of pockets.
But
I've
it makes
definitely-
perfect sense. I mean, that's how you get things like bags of holding. It's how you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So a God of Pockets ended up being something that became relevant to the game I was DMing, and so my universes all have a God of Pockets now.
I love this. I'm here for
Uh,
it.
so for me, it was the God of Narration is the person that does the recaps at the beginning of the sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about the fact that they were fighting over this God's Well is supposed to have thousands of captured gods in it.
Yeah.
That the old Kasari Empire was keeping for future use, possibly maybe in other nuclear reactors. Anyway, and I was like, well, some of them would have escaped while this crisis was going on.
Mhm.
What would be an interesting one to have escaped? And then I was like, it's got to be the God of Narration,
Yeah.
someone who wouldn't necessarily be dangerous or angry, necessarily, because he had his purpose. He was narrating all sorts of stuff while he was in the God's Well.
He was a real nice guy. Like, I liked
He
him.
gave you guys information, useful
Yeah,
information
he
too.
saved our butts.
Um, and yeah, it was. And then he was like, "Wait, you can hear me?
That was
Oh
so
no,
good.
oh no."
Okay.
But yeah, no. And then in this game, again, Steve only works, I feel, in Steve. Well, I mean, Steve's funny no matter what in
Yeah.
a fantasy game, but it especially works next to a guy called Boglep the Small. It's
Yeah.
just you put those two people next, the two guards that look exactly the same. One's named Boglep
God
the
of
Small, and
late
one's
for
called
dinner.
the God of Late for Dead.
Sorry, I
Uh,
just saw chat.
but yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's to me at least, I was like, I wanted to get that's one of the thing about this is the introductory adventure that I designed for you guys,
Yeah.
and part of it is familiarizing both you and the audience with my style.
Yeah.
And so that was also, I mean, it's a small thing to have three different people of three different sort of naming conventions here,
Mm-hmm.
but it helps to do exactly that, hopefully. Same thing with like the little cubby hole in the map. Just be like, details matter on the maps. Just because these aren't maps I made, if I'm looking at the map, and sometimes this comes up in ways that I'm not expecting, because sometimes the players notice. This has happened in other games. Sometimes the players notice things on these maps that I didn't notice, and then I see it, and I'm like, oh no, okay, well that has to be important. So how is it important? And I'm like, I have about 5 seconds. If I don't say something in the next five
Yeah.
seconds, so I'm just yes, let's work on that. Roll the perception check, and then my brain is now running while you're going on your perception check. Uh,
Yeah. I like the fact that you are so willing to adapt and roll with stuff, and whenever there's been something that isn't a typical situation, and I've in many games with Sim, I've said, "Hey, I've got a funky idea. Can I try it?" And you're always willing to roll with it. I have yet to find something that you just flat out say no to.
well, that's because I mean, if a good player is asking something like that, they're usually asking in a way that's going to improve the game.
Yeah. And I
And I
will
don't.
say, watching the other cast members, my goodness gracious, I forgot how brilliant the three of you are. Y'all are so smart. Like there
You
was
just like
the reactor
shenanigans.
stuff. I was just sitting back going, "Oh my god, these people are smart." It was intimidating.
We just like to create shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's,
Um,
and you're doing such amazing stuff too. I mean, please don't count yourself out of that
Well,
because
I am enjoying watching cuz like all of y'all are friends. And so it's really fun watching everybody getting to play off each other because I haven't gotten to play with this group ever before. And so it's kind of like I got to put together like a dream team and it has been so much fun and just the chemistry between everybody and I was nervous bringing Sim in because he didn't know anybody and it just everybody has seemed to click and gel really well and it makes me super happy. So I just had to say that.
it's been really fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Plus, I mean, like I'm always a little I don't want to say nervous, but it probably is a certain level of nervousness. I'm always nervous with new groups of people because I'm not always, I guess, especially in chat, I can be a little cold and a little business-like, I
Mm-hmm.
guess is the best way to put it. And that's not everyone. It's not always a great first impression. I don't feel like I make in chat sometimes. That's why I love to be able to sit down with people in like a voice chat.
Yeah.
Because I'm a lot less. I'm a lot more friendly in a voice chat than I am in regular chat. So, because I think I overthink chatting too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you're organizing something, it's got to be in text form. That's how the world works now. Uh, I'm just not. I still have problems every once in a while where I'm like, I feel like I overthink the stuff that I'm typing out. So when I got introduced to this new group of people, I'm like, all right, best face forward, and hope for the best. And I think everything's working out so far, and we will keep playing and we'll see how things go. Let's see here. And all your the thing we were going back to, as long as your players are good, like people talk about like I have rules against this and I have rules against that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
as long as your players are good, you don't need those rules. The rules are for people that are causing problems more than anything else. It's good to have a set of like guidelines and rules, especially for
The
sensitivity.
rules are more guidelines, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially,
that's why Rule Zero exists, right?
Yeah.
Like Rule
Yeah.
Zero is there to set the tone for everything else. And
Yeah. I feel like Rule of Cool is
That's nice,
probably misnamed. It's really more Rule of Fun.
Yeah.
Like if it's gonna like obviously we're playing a game with a rule set and it's important to use that as your baseline. But if there's always a way in the rules that you're playing with to do the thing that somebody wants to do, right? Like it's very difficult for somebody to come up with an ask that what's going on in chat. What are you
We were talking about how you just run with stuff, and Billa said like dumping a potion of hardened skin down someone's throat to prevent them from being absorbed into a Godswell breaking ritual.
Yes, that is a thing that happened.
That
Yes.
is a thing that happened.
Crap,
Lurking
where was
Raider,
I?
I think I need to add that quote. I love that quote from Doctor Who, and I feel like I need to add that into my session 0 because I feel like every time I run a session 0, I'm sorry, I totally
No.
tangented here.
No,
but
go ahead.
I have a 6-page session 0. And I feel like I always have to preface it with there's a reason every single one of these points is in this session 0.
Yeah.
And that we're having these conversations, and some of them will seem obvious to people, but every single one of them is in here for a reason.
Yeah.
For a thing that actually happened, right?
Because it's actually happened in the 20 plus years I've been playing and been a problem.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I just kind of need to like emblazon that on something and just be like this. And it moves quickly. It's and some of them with certain groups I'll skip if I know that it's a group that doesn't need that. But if I have to do a full session 0, like for a group I've never played with before, where it's a new campaign, but yeah, that's so relevant, I think, with tabletop, where when you trust the people you're playing with, you don't need the same number of guardrails. But I think that's not to say that you shouldn't always have certain guardrails. I think safety tools are always important at tables.
Yeah. It can become very
even
easy
when
to
you
become...
know the people and when you've been playing with them for years and they're friends of yours. You never know someone's background or life experiences or what may have happened that morning. Like, so stuff comes up. So that's part of why safety tools always should be part of your practice.
There's
with
always
games.
there's always that point where you think to yourself, like, we know each other really, really well. We don't need all these rules. And like the thing I'm literally talking about here of like good players don't screw up these kinds of things, but that's absolutely most of the time true. It works with regards to like rule interpretations. Like, I'd like to be able to cast this spell in the future. We make that happen? That's what I'm talking about. But a lot of people will do exactly that. They'll get really comfortable with their party. They'll get really and they'll know each other inside and out, but you can't know everybody 100%, and sometimes it happens, and bad things come from that if you don't address it quickly.
Yeah.
And it's like I've never had this happen. Well, I should say I've never had this happen because I've always had this rule, so who knows? But for my very first game, one thing I included was that like if you discover loot that none of the other characters know about in a room, you still have to tell them about it.
Yeah.
And it's never come up as a problem, but I've always had that rule. So who knows if it, and I've seen it come up in games I've played before where people will be like, I found 200 gold. That's mine now.
Yeah.
So it's, and or little things like in or PvP of any kind of PvP roles, player versus player roles, require the permission of the other player before they can even be rolled for. Again, hasn't really come up, but I've always had that rule, and I've
had it come up.
Yeah, I've seen it in games I've played in enough to know that it's worth keeping. And I don't think, actually, I legitimately do not think it would be a problem with this group specifically, but it's still good to have. It's just good to
Yeah.
have those kinds of things in place.
But
Those are
this
good
group
guide
would
rails.
probably check anyway. We would pop
Exactly.
out of character
Yeah.
and say, hey, is it okay if I try
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
steal that thing
Yeah,
from
yeah.
your pocket? But I don't think this is a group that would do that
No.
generally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think PvP is one of those things that's one of the biggest sources of conflict I see as DM
Yeah.
with groups. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something I don't allow at my tables either. PvP and PvP as in stealing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Not
Player.
not just
Yeah.
but if
We
your
use
characters are
PvP,
asleep
yeah.
and someone's keeping watch,
Yeah.
don't go through somebody else's
We get this
goodies
idea in our
and
heads when
steal stuff.
the reason why I like to say any player versus player roles to be a little bit more specific is because when you say PvP, a lot of people will think only in the sense of video game PvP, like
Yeah,
player
yeah.
versus player combat. And what I mean is anything outside of like social roles that you're rolling against somebody else. And even with the social roles, when we're talking about that, you can't use deception to force somebody to do something they don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or persuasion, for example. It's always going to be as long as they want to do it, it's fine. But also, I will say, even having those rules in place with a bad group can still lead to problems because then there'll be social pressure to say yes and all these other problems that can pop up. So even with the rules in place, like, and that's just one example, even with these sorts of safety rules and guidelines and guardrails in place, as a DM, and it's not just the DM's responsibility, but as a DM, I have to be sitting back and observing and making sure everybody is doing things because they want to and not because they're being pressured into doing those things.
Yep.
But yeah, so we can bring it back to this scene here where you guys finally meet up with Meg Frock, and you guys immediately get her trust by complimenting her hat. There was I legitimately expected you guys, like, she's very friendly, but she's also a little worried because the last people that came by were extremely mean.
Sure.
But I expected you guys to have some back and forth, some trying to convince her that you guys were worthy of talking to Bigger Frog. But you guys immediately complimented her hat, and I was like, no, and her personality, that's good enough.
I love that.
If you guys had been like, we're here to help, we want to save the island and all these other things, she'd be like, all right, convince me, and there'd be persuasion checks. But no, you guys complimented her hat. She's very proud of her hat.
I'm telling you, man, go through life and randomly compliment people. Not only does it make their day, like make them super happy, but it makes you feel good because you get to see joy brought to someone's day. And sometimes it goes a long way to working out for your benefit too.
So I've put the number on the screen. You can see it if you're looking at the map. For 3, that would be where the third journal entry would have been at. It's right next to where the players are.
Right next to where the players are. That's an NPC. Give me a second.
Up at the top.
I got a lot going on my computer right now. I'm adding new emotes. Oh, yeah,
cool.
on the log there.
Yeah. So if it never came up any other way, you would have found the journal entry in the log.
Yeah.
But because I think you guys brought up the journal entries, or at least you guys brought up that you'd been found some stuff on the island.
Yeah.
When you spoke to Bigger Frog, he literally materialized it in front of you instead. This was nice. I was always hoping that you guys would come here. There's a scene a little bit later on you guys are going to see that we didn't end up using, actually. That included the 4th journal entry, so I ended up having to give you guys the 4th and 5th at the same time. But you guys talked to Bigger Frog here. A lot of this was not outside the realm of what my expectations were for what you guys would do and talk about. Yeah. Although it was a long conversation. I did not actually, that's not true. Not fully true. I knew you guys were going to get all the information that you got here, but the form it took was different. I originally had the idea of the nuclear reactor as being significantly more fantasy coded than science fiction. But you guys dived in really hard on the details of what was going on and made multiple checks to try and like determine what was going on.
So what I knew was I was so impressed.
Well, I mean, even if you guys hadn't have quote unquote made the checks with the right rolls, it told me as the DM that the players wanted to know this information.
Yeah.
And it gave me the sense of like, I need to, if not through checks, I need to eventually at some other future point let you guys come to the conclusions that need to be came to.
Yeah.
So but you guys dived in and made the checks, so it was very easy for me to just be like, okay, well, here's the information you need. I've a lot of DMs I've seen and played with, even very good DMs, try to hide as much information from the players as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a natural sort of inclination to like, I want to avoid spoilers sort of thing, so I
Yeah.
don't want to let the players or the characters know too much information too quickly.
Yeah.
But one, I feel like, and I've definitely watched actual plays where this has come up as a problem. It leads to like 45 minutes of the players not knowing what they need to do and just going around in circles on stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not fun to watch. And I'm betting it's probably not that fun. It's fine, you know, if there are good RP moments in there too, but it's probably not as much fun to play either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to keep an eye on like what your knowledge expectations are. So once you guys dived in and you knew that it was literally almost a nuclear reactor, understanding its purpose and how it works, all these other things, I was like, okay, cool. And then later on, I changed something because of this conversation and the way it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's move you guys to the tavern. Unless you guys, by the way, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. If you have any about like any of
And
the
chat
stuff.
too. If you have
Yeah.
questions, please let us know. Like, we want to make sure that this is a place that if you have questions for us, that you
Mhm.
are able to ask them as
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
because that's the purpose of these conversations, being live. And
Absolutely. And this is I just love this map. Honestly, I
This
just
is
was
it's
so
looking
so
for an excuse to
beautiful.
map it.
It really is so beautiful.
I just needed an excuse to use this map, honestly.
That's fair.
I had planned. So you guys ended the first session before you hit Frogtown.
Yeah.
In the design of this adventure, it was going to be essentially a two shot,
Mm-hmm.
and this was your middle point. Later on, I think I added a little bit to it because you guys took a little bit longer to get to here, and I was like, well, if it's going to be 3 episodes anyway, we might as well be 3 full episodes worth of content.
Yeah.
And so you guys get here and you have your conversations with. One thing that was really funny was we were getting close to needing to go on break,
Uh-huh.
and you guys were having great RP moments, but we needed to go on break. We were 15 minutes late because I try and break us at exactly the halfway point, but we were about 15 minutes late, and I was very close to just saying we're gonna have to stop here and we'll come back to that conversation a little bit. But about at the 25, I want to say it was 25-minute mark, I realized what was going on. So I had maybe a little bit earlier than that even. I had Frog in a Wizard Hat pass out drunk to be like a punctuation on the scene. However,
We had to check that shit out.
However, you guys took that as an opportunity to examine his hat, which took an extra significant amount of time. And then like discuss like, oh my god, he's really powerful with this hat and everything. So that
You can't give us Frog in a Wizard Hat and give us an opportunity to check
know.
out the in a wizard hat.
Right.
part.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. So yeah, you guys do that, and I was like, ah, shit.
And also, I will always be suspicious, because I have given so much reason to, so many reasons in the past. Katie knows many of them, but I will always be suspicious we're being spied on, and that someone like Frog in a Wizard Hat is wearing something that's really dangerous to us, or is themselves a really dangerous being,
That is
Yeah.
with
perfectly
or
reasonable.
without the hat. And so I will always that will give me the opportunity to go do that.
You'll find as you play more and more in my world that a lot of characters really are earnest and serious and sincere. However, you're not wrong to be suspicious. And if you're having a conversation in earshot of somebody else, that person's hearing you.
Yeah.
We had that literally happen in the home
God, that
game
was so bad.
Well, I
I-
asked about that if there were people listening to us.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
This
I,
one. So
I spilled some really secret information in front of an NPC in our Saturday night game. It was me, Doug, and Billith did it too, I think, if I remember correctly. I think it was me, Doug, and Billith are the problem
Cassius
children.
just said frog in a tinfoil hat.
Oh my god!
But yeah, they were
Jen in a tinfoil hat.
Jen in a tinfoil.
so
Literally in one of my first ever campaigns, we had like the object of the campaign and didn't mention that we were bringing it with us one day, and the DM said that meant we left it back at the place we were staying unprotected, and
wow.
it got stolen. And so I no longer trust anything ever. And then, you know, I played
I'm
with
not quite
Todd.
to that
I
level,
don't
but
trust
like
anything ever.
not quite to that level of thing. I think most of the time I would be like, it would have made sense for you to grab that. So
Yeah, you tend to be pretty fair.
However,
we messed up.
Frog in a Tia hat, as in Tiamat. Oh, okay, sorry. I quickly glanced over. I thought it said tinfoil hat because we were talking about being paranoid. But
amazing.
Yeah, in a Tia hat is amazing as well.
In that
we
one
also have.
game...
I've been putting questions in our Zoom chat that I've seen in chat.
Okay, cool.
So if you want to keep an eye on those things. But
real
frog in a
quick-
tinfoil hat. Frog in a tinfoil hat is Frog in a lizard hat's cousin.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, gosh, that's a neat idea. Oh, you
That's
guys
a
have
fun. It's a fun.
Like, you
I
can
have-
go in so many directions.
Well, see, okay, so
Frog's family is big.
It's funny because we're talking about like needing to go on break, and we really need to go on break now for
We do
being
need
at
to
the
go on
halfway
break,
point. But just real quick, the frog in a tinfoil hat. So I'm working on like 4 radio stations, like in a general sense, and I'm really liking the idea of a frog in a tinfoil hat running a radio station off of Chicken Island. So yeah, I might.
Or even just the frog in a tinfoil hat radio show, like
a
Yeah.
conspiracy theory.
the
sort
3
of.
a.m.
Yeah.
local radio.
Yeah,
I'm also getting big Night Vale vibes.
Yeah. But we do need to go on break. So we will come back in, let's say, 15 minutes.
Code in a
And
beer hat.
So, quarter till?
quarter till.
Alrighty. Guys, we will see you at a quarter till.
Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey. It's a brand new day. On the slow coast, your allies will help with blades and bows and magic as well. Hey, hey. Heroes on their way. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, hit your wall and there. Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions.
Ahoy hoy.
Hello.
Welcome back. Let's dive into it because I don't want to have you guys here all night. Right. So you guys were here in the tavern. Julie the moth did not have a name until you asked for the name of the moth.
Nice.
That was another thing that I had to come up with on the fly, and I really should have named it because obviously you're going to ask about the moth, the giant moth behind the bar.
Yeah. Just count on me always asking if somebody has a name.
It's fair.
It's
I mean,
a
that's
thing.
just true in general for D&D. As a
Yeah.
dungeon master, I should have known better.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, if you don't do something, the players are going to want to do that thing.
Yeah.
And then
That's
if
what I
you
have
put in
learned.
tons and tons of work, the players won't. Like when I came up with 16 myconids of all different species based on different types of mushrooms with all different personalities, and my players didn't
Oh
care.
no.
Oh, that's awful.
I was
Oh.
so sad. I had description. I so much work.
Um,
Another
would break my heart.
question.
So
So
the-
we have audience questions that are going into Zoom chat.
yes.
Awesome.
And another one here.
Thank you for doing that. Jen.
Now there's no captions, Goblin.
Yes. Give me 1 second. I have to turn it back on.
Thank you, J-Dog, and thank you for letting us know earlier that they were still active. And correct, Lurking Writer.
Okay. They should be coming back.
Captions are important.
Are you guys getting captions for Jen and Sumerian as well? I'm just curious because currently I forgot it was on and it was only set for my mic. But that actually is awesome if the sound is carrying through my mic.
I'm actually not seeing captions for you even right now.
Oh, it should be back on. Oh, I forgot to re-enable. Enable. There we go. Okay, now it's enabled.
Let's
Here we
see.
go.
Okay.
How far behind
I
is
see
the
yours now.
screen?
I am not seeing ours, but
That's the issue I was having because I was trying to use the OBS, but it'll only let you select one audio source. So I would have to find a way to blend. I bet I could blend me and.
That's fair. Do we want to, while you're working on that, just keep
Yeah.
moving forward, or?
Yeah, go ahead to the questions. That's.
Oh yeah, what was the
Yeah.
question?
so we have 3. The first question is from Cassius, which is there a biggest frog?
Maybe. We'll find out.
The second question is from the Lurking Writer, which is there a big frog but not a big as bigger frog? Discworld reference.
I feel like, honestly, in this setting with someone whose name is literally Frog in a Wizard hat, there's bound to be somebody whose name is Big Frog, but not quite as big as Bigger Frog.
Yeah.
Or maybe not Big Frog. No, Large Frog that's not quite as big as Big Frog, I think would probably be likely. Because there's not a lot of space. There is a lot of space between Big and Bigger Frog, but there's not a lot of options, I think, at that point. If you're bigger than Big Frog, you're already a monstrous size. There was a third one, right?
And there was a third one from the Lurking Writer, which is how and or why did you decide on a hoy hoy as your greeting of choice?
It's oh gosh.
You've done that since I met him.
I've done that
You
for a
did
very,
it
very
on
long
your,
time. I do it on my channel. I do it
yeah.
on a
These
hoy
captions
hoy.
are very weird.
A hoy hoy has been. It's the Alexander Graham Bell's original thing. That really is about it. People will be like, "Is that a Simpsons reference?" It really isn't. Although I think at some point in my life, I probably didn't know about Oh Hoy Hoy, and I'd probably heard the Simpsons, Mr. Burns do it before. But understanding, of course, that the joke is that Mr. Burns is so old he uses Alexander Graham Bell's original greeting of Ahoy Hoy. Is a fun joke when you get the idea, when you understand that is what the joke is, but it's not the source of it. I guess I just chose it because I thought it sounded interesting. It works with a nautical themed campaign too, just in general, but I've been doing that for at least since 2015, probably earlier. I think I was doing it in my personal life well before that as well, but like when we're talking about being in public and stuff. Yeah, no, that's it's just me. That's just me being quirky and weird, I guess. This map did not get used. So, when we were in our second session, Jen, you were still having trouble with running Roll20 and Zoom at the same time because it was just using up too many resources and was lagging. And because of that, I was trying to avoid unnecessary combat, let's put it that way, because that would have required the virtual tabletop to be opened up at the same time. This map was basically just about getting you guys an encounter. And let's see if I can un-GM layer some of these things. So you guys would have come in at the bottom of this map, worked your way up alongside this rickety old wooden thing, and then reached a point where that you either needed to jump across or somehow get to the northern part of the map. And the idea was if you made too much noise, you would have this monster show up.
Ooh.
Statted out as
take a look at Zoom chat because that's what the captions are showing. So I think you're picking up a totally different audio source.
Oh
my god, that is quite strange.
What is?
Home is the cells, walls, heaters. I know that's
It's
nonsense,
conveying
It's
Zoom.
just not even, it's not resembling phonetically at all.
It is an experimental
But it's
feature.
not even getting 1% of the words.
Yeah, I'm turning
Oh,
it
it's
off.
getting you correctly,
Okay.
but it's not getting anybody else.
That's because it's coming through my
remotely.
speakers. So
Got
it's
it.
probably got some sort of audio conflict that it doesn't like.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep looking. It is appalling how difficult it is to find a customizable multi-input closed captioning.
Do you want us to?
Oh, I should probably pull the map.
I actually see this question. I happen to be looking at chat right now because I was looking at the closed captioning problem. How difficult has it been to translate real world scientific concepts into being old world knowledge that has been obscured by time for the setting you've created? Not hard, because I do it a lot. It's sort of like a core component to this setting, is that there is like this high technology old empire that fell. I feel like a lot of settings, actually, I think is the right way to put this, use that old technology concept, but then they don't play into it fully. Like everything stays fantasy. Like there's this old empire from 10,000 years ago, but it's all still just basic magic stuff. And I feel like going into actual like old world knowledge of like radiation, nuclear reactors, that kind of stuff is very easy to do if you just give it any sort of small level of consideration. Like radiation,
I loved that
Chernobyl,
description.
Chernobyl is a good guideline in a sense, because like we not we I understand radiation enough, but the average person doesn't understand radiation to the level that of scientific accuracy you need. To the average person, radiation really is just turning a place into an eldritch location that kills you and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
um so it's not hard to translate because that's the average experience of a person in the world. So you just need to just barely get yourself into the mind of somebody who might not be there. There are plenty of people out there. I mean, it's not a lot anymore because it's pretty widespread. There are plenty of people out there in the world that don't have cell phones, don't have. There are plenty of people in the world right now who don't understand these scientific concepts. So it's not a stretch at all.
Yeah.
Are we still working on the thing there?
I turned it off
Okay.
because
Okay.
I,
We'll
I
just
I can't control it, so I turned it off.
Okay, well, we'll work on getting it fixed for the next
Yeah.
time. Did
I'm supposed to. We ran out of time this week. Lauren's going to sit down with me, and we're going to go over a couple
Okay.
possibilities.
Okay.
But with Gen Con, and then
Right, yeah, yeah. But it's very critical because like it's been a
it
few
is.
sessions. It's
It's
very
it's
critical that we
really
get this right.
it's really frustrating
Yeah.
because I've done some searches on my own, and everything I've tried
Yeah.
either doesn't allow you to customize it or it only allows one audio input. And so
Um
it's very frustrating.
so this Blight Beast was actually going to be a pretty difficult fight for you guys. I think it was a CR3 and you guys are level 3 in a party of 4. So it wouldn't have been like deadly necessarily, but it was supposed to present you guys with a place to have to use up some of your resources. But again, because I was trying to avoid putting you guys into combat for this particular session, not necessarily, I knew you guys were going to have to fight Captain Colin later, but like I didn't want to add to that. This would have been like combat and then another combat afterwards. Plus, from the way you guys had been playing, I didn't feel like this essentially liminal scene really fit the pacing of where you guys were going. You guys were ready and raring to go to the pirate hideout. So
Yeah.
let's just get you to the pirate hideout. And the other fourth note was right here next to the Blight Beast. And regardless of how you guys, so this Blight Beast was sort of a Schrodinger's Blight Beast. He's only there if you guys make a bunch of noise. He's not there if you guys go to investigate, but you do it quietly and stealthily. He wouldn't have been there. Only if you guys were reckless would I have brought him into the game.
Nice.
So there was always the idea you would need to have to climb down anyway because there's a break in the thing, and having 4 people make dexterity checks to cross that, somebody's bound to fall, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you go from there. But that would have been where the fourth note was, and then from here. So this map didn't end up getting used, but oh, Pirate Cove is its own folder. Give me one moment. So we move here to the entrance to Pirate Cove. And actually, just to be clear, like this pirate ship at the bottom is actually its own map piece that can be moved.
One sec. Oh, cute.
As is the, well, that's your ship.
Yeah,
It is the
yeah.
same, yeah.
I'm trying to.
As
Oh God.
as is the little rowboat. That's actually an asset. Yeah, so I brought you guys to this map, and really this was me definitely going in and being like, all right, wouldn't it be funny if a pirate skull sort of style hideout was actually supposed to be a warning and you weren't supposed to go in because obviously it's a skull.
Right?
Why would yeah.
But
Um
I mean, that's where the
yeah,
fun is, clearly.
uh and the fight with Cayman, Kess, and Colin was always supposed to be a sense of Cayman and Kess were going to be very easily persuaded to not fight you. And Colin was always going to be an extremely heavy lift because he owes like, I don't know, how much was the money I said? Like 4,000 gold or something
Yeah.
stupid like that. I think it actually might have been 16,000. But he owes like 16,000. He needs these artifacts. He ain't giving this location up. He needs them.
Yeah.
He has to sell them. He has to pay back his loan. Um he's dead if he doesn't, so he might as well fight you guys is sort of his thinking.
Yeah.
Um and so it was going to be a really hard lift. And then I did that thing with the advantaged, disadvantaged roll where I can't remember who rolled the check. I think it might have been Furlos. Do you
For
remember? For convincing them not to fight.
I think it
Was
was
it?
either Furlos or Essequa.
That's fair. Jen, do you remember?
I
It was
Don't
Furlos because
remember.
Furlos was on
It
the
was Furlos. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Furlos was the furthest in.
Yeah, Furlos made the check, and I basically was like, all right, you're advantaged and disadvantaged at the same time, but not in the way you think. And that's not a straight roll. Roll twice. The highest number goes to convincing the easy to convince people, and the lowest roll goes to convincing the hard to convince person.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a mechanic that I have used very sparingly, but in group persuasion or deception checks, I feel like it can be good to differentiate your groups
Mm-hmm.
in that way. And in fact, I could imagine myself if there's an even bigger group going, roll 4 of them. This one applies to this, the lowest will apply to this person, the next lowest will apply to this person, and so on. But it's a lot easier to just do it with the advantage roll.
Yeah.
And then you guys come in and you guys kick the shit out of Colin, basically effortlessly. Uh,
Yeah.
and Jennifer, you were the one that got the killing blow, but you didn't want to kill him. I think
I didn't. Yeah.
I rewatched it after we did it, and you did originally want to kill you, or at least you said you put a hole through his chest, and
Yeah.
then
And
we
then
went,
I
back
thought
on it.
about it and realized that no,
Yeah.
that didn't make sense with these characters, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
once I gave it some thought, it was not.
Yeah, and that was very easy to fix, and you just beamed him in the head and knocked him out.
Yeah.
And then you guys removed him from the heavily irradiated beach. There is a mechanic going on here, and I'm going to move you to the. Oh, that's the wrong button. I almost closed the Zoom call completely.
Oops.
That would have been bad. I'll move you guys to the inside. So there was a mechanic undergoing, well, not a mechanic, but a story. I guess a story mechanic would be the right way to put it.
Mhm.
There was a story mechanic going on in here. So, Peak, the god at the bottom of this that's causing most of the problems. Peak is angry at the Kasari Empire to a serious degree. And
I
he
picked up on that.
considers,
Yeah.
he considers Avalon and Brescia to very much be like the same as the Kasari Empire because they were cities of the Kasari Empire. The reason why the radiation gets worse is
Oh.
actually because what?
Nothing.
Oh.
I did something.
The reason why the radiation got worse and basically killed a bunch of people is because they brought Abelina in. You guys will remember in session 0, Abelina is the daughter of the governor of Avalon.
Oh,
So she is a natural born Avalinian. So he can sense her even all the way up here, and he got really, really angry about it.
Nice.
Which also was really convenient for me because it allowed for the timing to be perfect.
Yeah.
For now it's a critical problem. And plus, because you guys showed up, and at least one, and Dominique is a Brescian, it's now even worse. He's even more angry.
Yeah.
But it's a detail that it's good that your characters and players don't know, because now you're here and you think, we've got to solve this problem. We can't leave.
Yeah.
Even though intrinsically you are the problem. If you had left, the radiation levels would have still been high and damaging, but they wouldn't have been up to lethal levels. and that is just dumb background stuff that's going on. Not
Yeah.
necessarily important for you guys to know, but since we're doing a retrospective on it, I thought I could tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And then we got the journal entries with the 5th and 4th journal entries. I remembered originally I had the first journal entry in the chest as like loot they'd picked up and moved on with. But what ended up happening with it was that I had changed it so it was found in the muck in the Kraken's body when
Mm-hmm.
you look for the cutlass. And that actually helped me later because if it had been in the chest, that would have indicated that they knew it was worth something because that was their loot chest.
Yeah.
The fact that it was just laying on the ground meant that I could say that they didn't know how valuable these would have been.
Yeah.
And then of course I was like, what would pirates who don't know what's going on with something valuable like this do with it? And of course the first thought was I'm going to make Essequa, the character, extremely angry. They're using it for toilet paper. It's such an easy joke to make, but
I don't understand why, but every D&D campaign that I have played, I won't say every, but like at least a good 70% of the D&D campaigns I have played have at some point delved into how bathrooms work.
that's fair.
I don't know why. It
Well,
always happens.
what is that one
I'm
piece
sorry
of
to interrupt, folks.
Yeah.
I have to actually split.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, not a
I'm
problem.
so sorry to split, but I will talk to you soon, and I'll see you next week for
Okay.
game.
Mwah.
piece?
Okay.
Thanks for
Bye.
coming. Bye.
What's that one piece of
Hang
DM
on, hang on.
advice?
Ugh. Give me a sec because Zoom blipped. Oh, wait, that's the wrong button. I need that one up. All right, go ahead and keep talking. I'm fixing the overlay, y'all.
It's like, what's that one piece of DM advice? If you look at a dungeon and you can't figure out where your monsters use the restroom, it's a bad dungeon design. Which
That's
I
funny.
really, which I really do like as advice generally.
Yeah.
Because because you do need to give strong considerations of the way the world is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not considering those things, then your worlds are thinner. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Which is maybe silly to be like, aha, toilet paper joke makes my world more deep, but it can.
No, it
They pull
absolutely
again.
can. And like I was saying, it's come up in every game. It makes me laugh.
But from here we go into the reactor control room via an elevator. And I mentioned this in the previous bonus action I did, but when you guys came into this room, I did not have anything for certain except for the fact that there was a couple of gods fighting in a box
Yeah.
that boiled water. Everything else, from the plane of water channeling water through to the Feywild decontamination section,
Mm-hmm.
all of that was come up on the fly based off of either just ideas I had in the moment or stuff that you guys had sort of asked and or inquired about in ways that led me to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you guys got in here, oh, I feel like I'm just talking now.
No, I'm listening. You're
Yeah.
going over the fun stuff. So
Yeah.
keep going.
So when you got in here and you guys had to basically deal with the god underneath it all.
Yeah.
You guys interface with all of the stuff and finding the an example of that is when you guys I always knew there was going to be an ability as soon as you guys asked about it. Actually, let me be clear here.
Yeah.
There was not a handbook, I don't believe, in my mind when I designed this scene.
Yeah.
When you guys asked about it, I was like, of course there'd be a handbook in the computer, of course there would be some sort of guidelines.
Makes sense.
And then I presented it to you and I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a complication, so I'm like, it's a 6,000 something word handbook and there is no index.
Yeah, that made me giggle. And there is no index. I was like, oh, that's funny, but also oh.
And from my and the back of my mind, I'm like, this is a wrinkle that they will have to work out. And for a moment, I thought that you guys were just going to be like, well, that's that, because you guys moved on.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's that, and moved on. And then a little bit later, Jennifer was like, hey, wait a second. Can I just do like a search function on this computer? And I'm like, yes, you can.
Yup.
I didn't necessarily even have that as a solution in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But when I presented you guys the book, I was like, all right, let's see if they can come up with a solution for this problem that I presented to them. I always say that when it comes to DMing, the trick is to make sure that the player's solutions always feel earned.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you didn't think of it, you don't have to have the solution in your head to a puzzle in order for it to feel earned. It just needs to be something that fits the world and fits the setting and fits and like is clever, honestly. And yeah, so you guys went in here, you guys did the computer stuff, talked to the gods. I'm really sad that Jennifer had to leave right before we got to the dream sequence bit.
Oh, that was so cool, though.
But
I have so many questions.
ask them. That's what this is for.
Okay, so did you know going into this that she was going to be the one that was focused
Right.
at the end, that she was going to be the one taken, or was that
This-
kind of
This was some high level juggling on my part.
It was
Okay.
it was really well handled.
So I didn't have any of this necessarily planned out beforehand. I had that map in mind on the off chance that I could get two things needed to happen. First, Jennifer's character needed to be engaged with the god interface and also in it long enough. I really wanted to get that I'm curious and I want to get more
Mm-hmm.
sense out of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's always a good point to give somebody some sort of extra little thing like that.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was I was thinking this was high level juggling that all happened in the moment really. Was I knew that I could give Lauren a job of divine magics, so that was easy.
Right.
I knew that the center console required persuasion.
Yeah.
But I also know that in a situation where that's the case, that Dominique would naturally gravitate to a persuasion roll.
Right.
But what I needed to do was give you something else that you had to do.
Yeah.
And that was illusion magic. I was guaranteed in my back of my mind, I'm like, absolutely a bard. I didn't actually look at
I
your
had
spell list.
one illusion spell.
I was juggling a lot of things. I just assumed that a bard would have some illusion spell available. And that worked out for you on the other end.
Yeah.
And what was really funny is I said that the trickery domain cleric would be the one to do the under normal circumstances, a trickery domain cleric could do all of these things at the same time. And it had not occurred to me that you needed to access two consoles at the same time.
Yeah.
But it worked out so well because
really
a trickery domain cleric can create a duplicate.
Uh-huh.
And yeah. And like we can hand wave away that she could probably talk to the entity without having to necessarily access the center console, but you can't hand wave away that she needs to cast the spell into both consoles around the same time.
Right.
So that worked out extremely well. And you guys said it, not me, which was even of course it needs to be a trickery domain cleric.
Yeah.
They have invoked duplicity. I was like, yes, that is correct.
That is it.
Is absolutely correct.
How often do you find yourself like we say something and you think, oh, that's really cool, and you adopt it into the setting or the story? How often do you think that happens?
I'd say like 50% of the time you guys say something that's setting based or like lore based or like a solution based.
Yeah.
Like
Nice.
at least half.
Yeah. Sweet.
It's all about like D&D is collaborative.
Yeah.
Like it's collaborative improv essentially with a rule set behind it. With a much more robust rule set than something like Zip Zap Zop is. But
Right.
it's just a robust rule set behind improvised content. And improv doesn't have to be improv comedy. Improv is just improvising in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like if you guys come up with something that's one, if it's better than what I was, that's the important part. You got to be good at self-evaluation, I feel. I always tell people in the SCP wiki that like cold posting, which is on our wiki, it's basically posting an article without getting any feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad at the start, but once you're an experienced writer, you have got to start getting better at self-evaluation. And in
Yeah.
order to do that, you kind of do just need to be like, all right, let's drop it and see how it works. Because otherwise you're also wasting your critiquers' time because you're going to be presenting them with things that could have been easily corrected if you were better at self-evaluating.
Yeah.
So being able to immediately self-evaluate and say your idea is better than, and also not being too precious about your own ideas, not having too much pride around it too.
Yeah.
Being like, your idea is better than my idea. We're going with your idea. And thankfully, you don't even know what my idea was. So I can use that later on something else if I want to.
I worked on a LARP, and one of our biggest rules was no babies. No plot member was allowed to have a precious baby plot line or NPC or anything like that, because we wanted to make sure that everything was always open for players to impact.
Yeah.
And that was something I learned early on that I think has served me well over the years.
I also gambled a little bit between Essequa and Rivulet being the one who was going to end up talking to one, because Essequa's character had it to that point been a little bit more awkward, but not in a non-communicative way. Let's put it that way. Essequa is very much talking to other people and everything else, but it's still a little bit of that nerdy awkwardness, which naturally creeps into almost every wizard character.
Yeah.
So under normal circumstances, probably not going to volunteer for the job of talking to the gods and convincing them to do elsewise.
Sure.
But also, Rivulet is a charisma-based caster. So both player and character are going to realize if Dominique can't do this, then I should probably do this.
Yeah. And I like given the path and the image that I have for Dominique, I like the way that there is somebody else that she can just kind of step back and watch. And there's someone else who can handle negotiations, so to speak. And then basically her idea is let them do this, and if shit hits the fan, I'll step in, but until then, I'm just going to enjoy the show.
That's fair. And then Rivulet at the end of it all, after you guys were successful, is like, I'm like, are you like to step back? And Rivulet's like, no, well, how many opportunities do you have to speak to a god? I'm curious.
Yeah.
And I was like, excellent.
Sim, I'm gonna let you talk for a minute, because I just tried to sit differently and I did something to my back.
I was about to ask what was that, what those faces were about.
Yeah.
Let me just open up the chat real quick so that I can follow along if anyone has any questions.
I'll be back. Oh God, what did I do?
Let's see here. Quality. Let's just turn it down all the way because I don't care about actually watching the stream all that much. I just need to see the chat. Yeah, Bill, also get critique from people who hate your work. That is actually pretty useful.
Yeah.
That's a surprisingly useful thing. If someone asks if you're a god, tell them yes. Absolutely. Yes, I very much agree with that one. The DM playing the players. That's one way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, no, if at all possible, trying to maneuver people into the right locations and the right positions for a game to function properly. That's what you kind of have to do. But yeah, getting Rivulet into this scene would have probably happened no matter what. I just would have maybe later had it as part of a dream sequence after going to sleep or something like that. But it was much more narratively impactful to happen in this particular moment. So trying to design around or in the moment, like trying to design, it's not really designing around it, but like getting the players to do the things I want them to do in the moment was indeed a bunch of juggling. And then after that, you guys basically finished this whole thing off. One extra little note I can add in is that I immediately started to notice that the players were having and this is a pretty reasonable problem where they gosh, what's the way I'm going to put this? Yeah, juggling while keeping plates spinning. Um, one of the things is that the players ended up kind of reasonably focused on how radioactive certain things were, because that's a real problem you need to consider. And in the moment, I was like, they need a Geiger counter, because if they don't have a Geiger counter, they have absolutely zero way to know if this extremely dangerous energy is still extremely dangerous. So I gave them what I called a teller reader, and that teller reader ended up being sort of a way in for them to basically solve the radiation problem to an extent. And honestly, after that, they ended. I mean, the thing was, I'd already done like a 1 through 3 sort of review to the game, but then I realized that I was going to just make this about one episode, about episode 4. But having other players on board actually to discuss things actually, I think, adds a lot to the conversation. But more importantly, I realized that the fourth session was a lot of discussion, but not a lot of things occurred, especially not a lot of things where I had to make judgments. So there isn't a lot of insight I can give you into other than the characters that they were interacting with. I think Katie does know you know we can still see you. You're just wandering around.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm just trying to stretch. When
I was thinking that
pulled
too.
My foot up, and something right here pulled.
Ugh.
So.
But yeah, I had a feeling it was something along those lines.
I was trying to do my oh god, why am I old? I was trying to do my typical ADHD, pull my legs up into weird spots while I sit, and my body said, "No, I'm old."
I understand. Are you feeling a little bit better, or are you
Yeah.
able? Okay.
It was not great when I first got up. I'm fine.
Do you have any more? Like I was gonna say, the last session was really just a lot of talking between players.
I appreciate that you gave us that opportunity to kind of have these conversations that allow us to give insight into the characters, their motivations, where they've come from, and stuff like that. I thought the discussion of economics and wealth disparities was really interesting. And it helps, I think, kind of flesh out the world a little bit, but it also gives us a really good opportunity to get to know each other's characters. And have those little moments where it's like, oh, okay, you're going that angle, all right. Like the comment about so do you support that idea? And it was just like, no, but what the fuck am I gonna do? So little moments like that kind of give a glimpse into who the characters are and their motivations and how their current environment impacts them. That was really good, especially with it being so early in the campaign. Having those moments to
that's where you really find your character, really,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Having long conversations with other players, because it does double duty. Both players end up getting a better sense of who they are.
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing, I've seen this multiple times. Like, what's the biggest piece of advice you can give to somebody who wants to start DMing?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is the same as in life and the same as in writing, honestly. And that's listen. as a DM, uh, it's like, well, one, it's way easier on me when I can just sit back and let you guys have a conversation for 20 minutes. I'm not having to do anything other than observe you as actors and entertainers and be entertained.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, I've got to keep like my finger on the pulse the entire time.
Yeah.
But I don't need to. I don't need. So many DMs feel like they've got to interject themselves.
Yeah.
I always say, I keep NPCs in orbit around conversations when I can,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of I will you can detect, like, the best way to put it is a glitch in a conversation where things start to circle back on themselves,
Yeah.
and they finish the conversation, and then somehow it comes back to that topic because it's extremely important and they need to figure it out, but they don't have the tools yet or the information yet to figure it out. And then they get off of the topic and then they come back to it. And so as a DM, I need to be able to see when that's happening, and if at all possible, have maybe one of the orbiting NPCs who does have a solution able to come in and be like, here's a solution for you. I think we had that with the home game, actually, very, very recently.
Yeah.
With you guys trying to figure out what to do about
The
an
Godwell.
NPC. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because the NPC owned it, and you
We
were like, well,
basically, for the audience's sake, we came across this this room, and it had this thing called the Godwell, and it was this giant spiraling hole in the ground that had this really pretty kind of glass ice swirling surface, and it was a trap for gods. And we found out that somebody, basically, in order to close it, there had to be a death to open it and a death to close it. And it had been opened, and now we had to close it. And it was a very intense conversation that got real circular real fast. And we wound up with several characters who were prepared to seal that well. And it was honestly the saving grace for that situation that kept it from being a TPK of everybody trying to close the gate. Was basically we were still in combat, and so, or initiative rather, and so we kind of went through it that way. But it was
when the God
within
of
like 10
narration pops
seconds we
in.
were in a circular logic argument.
When the God of narration popped in
Yep.
and was like, here's, and then like, but he didn't know that you could hear him. He was just narrating the solution, and he's like,
So
wait,
good.
hold on, you can hear me? I actually wasn't talking about that. That's another example of it.
Which one were you talking
I was
about?
talking about when you guys were in the dining room trying to figure out how to steal the Godswell property
Oh yeah,
off of someone
when we were
else.
building this amazing heist, and then realized we've got this NPC who
Yeah,
could
you have a clone of the person
solve.
who owns it.
Yeah, we've got
But
the
you hadn't
solution
considered
right
that at
here,
all.
but we were planning this giant heist.
And I
Although
was
we
just
do
like,
get to do a train heist
yeah, that's true.
next session.
But
and
I
I'm
just
real.
I just had somebody listening behind a door, and I made you guys make perception checks, and then immediately you guys were like, well, you've been listening. Do you have a solution? We've been kind of spinning our wheels. And he's like, well, you said you had someone who looks exactly like the person that owns the place, so why don't you just use her?
Yeah.
And you guys were like, oh yeah,
Oh
we could
yeah.
just do that.
We've done that
Or
twice now.
yeah, with the money thing, with the
Yeah,
lady.
because I I don't know why, but I have a tendency to make things much more complicated
Yeah.
than they need to be. And so it's really nice to have party members who can kind of rein that in.
Well, that time it didn't require an NPC to tell you about it, but
No, that was
it was I
that
can't
was a
remember
party
who it
member that
was.
time.
I think it might have been it was Mavis.
Yep.
It was Mavis.
Yeah.
What happened was they were stuck in this mode, and it took them. They were in a good. It may have been up to 30 minutes long of just discussing how to convince this one NPC to do what they wanted.
Mhm.
Essentially, we're not going to go into too many details here.
Real
And
quick, just to address something in chat, that is the glow cloud. If you're familiar with Welcome to Night Vale, all hail the glow cloud. You may proceed.
So they needed to convince an NPC to do something they wanted. It was critically important that they do this. Well, it wasn't critically important because you guys still haven't done it yet, but at the time it seemed critically important. Um, and so they spent a good 30 minutes discussing it, and then one of the players finally remembered, and this was something they had access to as information the entire time, that this NPC owed 4,000 gold to someone. And they were like, "Wait, couldn't we just pay her? Why are we doing all this other stuff? We could just pay her some money, not the full 4,000 gold necessarily,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
just give her some money. She needs it desperately. She'll do what we want if we pay her." And everyone was like, "Wait, that's
Oh.
way more. That's way better than this." Like, you guys had this
Like, I was
legitimately
gonna be
like,
doing something. Jackson was gonna take
yeah, it was gonna
her
be
out and
take
will
out to
her.
dinner, take her out to dinner. You were gonna Cyrano de Bergerac,
It was over the top.
and then somebody was just like, "Why don't we just pay her some money to do what we want?" I'm like, "Yep, that would work probably."
Yeah, yep. That sounds much more likely to succeed than our
Then this
big
whole other thing.
romance heist
Other thing
would
sounds
be.
so much fun, but also maybe just maybe you don't have
But
to.
we're kind of on a scheduled deadline, I feel like,
Yeah,
because
yeah, you were at the
there's
time, yeah.
horrible things happening and we need to take care of them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting. I always keep like an NPC in orbit for like easy solutions when
Yeah.
it's necessary. But not always, because a lot of players will reasonably so be like, nobody's listening to us, right?
yeah,
Nobody's paying attention. Like, remember I think the problem with that scene, the one where you guys accidentally mentioned the spaceship in front of somebody you shouldn't have mentioned it
yeah,
in front of, was that we didn't do it on a map, right? We were
Yeah.
just doing it theater of the mind. So you had an idea that you were checking the room, and when you said
Yeah.
you were looking, I thought you were checking outside the room to see if
Yeah.
anybody else was listening. Although to be fair,
it was.
one of the other players who also said it out loud did have a full understanding of where everyone
Oh,
was.
okay.
So it
So
wasn't just you.
I'm gonna blame that on Billith, since Billith is actually in chat.
It was Harry Blank. Well, yeah, but it was actually Harry Blank. Specifically,
Yeah.
Doug also did it, and he's like, "No, I understood that she was here. I just forgot."
Yeah.
So it wasn't fully, but there was a little bit of miscommunication, especially
But it's
on your
fine.
part.
I mean, you roll with it, you run with it, and oftentimes it's the non-successes or the complications that make it
Oh,
so much more
absolutely.
enjoyable.
And so much, and that moment will be more memorable than just some random conversation that didn't have a really much of a conclusion. To just have like this very important-ish NPC go, "Wait, you guys have a spaceship?"
Yeah. Yeah. That got real awkward real fast. And then the Doug also mentioned, "Oh, so the king god just talked in your head." Yeah, he said this, and this. I'm really glad I did not go into the top secret info.
Oh yeah, it could
from
have been
him.
much worse. It could have
That could have been that might have pushed my character to murder the NPC.
Argon the Ageless as a concept is one of my favorite NPCs
He's
I've
so
come
cool.
up with. The idea of this like immortal, he's not, you guys keep calling him god level. I mean, he is level 20 for lack of a better way to put it in power, but he's not a god. He's just a
I think it's just the term of affection that Doug devised for him.
Yeah,
the God King makes me giggle. So
yeah, well, technically he is the vice president for life.
Yeah.
And he also happens to be immortal, so that's a very long time.
Yeah. He's my buddy in that game.
We're gonna probably wrap this up soon because I think we're at the end of the thing here. But for anyone who's watching, in this set, and it is in this setting, so this is actually topical. Argon the Ageless is the vice president for life of the Havern Provincial Union, which is a liberal democracy. Which those two things may not sound like they work together too well. But what ends up happening is presidents are elected from the Senate, and technically it's representative democracy. They have a Senate. But their presidents are elected, and as long as they don't try to curb anybody's freedoms or dive into fascism, he just doesn't care and does his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just whenever anyone does those things, they're like, "Hey, let's limit the freedoms of so and so, or let's do this awful thing." It's like, imagine if every time the U.S. Congress came up with some terrible law, the Congress was immediately dissolved, and whoever was in charge at the time was executed. That's not
That,
violently.
yeah, yeah.
He just shows up in their offices and kills them. That's the totality of it.
That
And then because
sets a
he's the vice
precedent, I
president,
feel like.
yeah, because he's the vice president, if he kills the president, he then becomes the president, and now he can reverse any of these fascistic changes
Right.
that they have been instituting.
Sure.
And he's done that 3 times in the history of the Vermont Provincial Union so far. And it's been necessary 2 of those times. I think the other time he was overreacting, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I created him as a character, so I get to say that.
Yeah. That's
Um,
fair.
I think one of those times he may have been a little bit overreacting.
Oh. Not ideal.
There'd be no Congress left. Don't threaten me. A lot of people, when I describe this, they're like, actually, that sounds amazing. Can we have that?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if it would really be amazing in a non-fantasy world,
I mean,
but
let's find out.
I
Sorry.
love the idea of this, and so, and also Argon the Ageless is essentially a great Khan, like Genghis Khan style conqueror who conquered the entire continent, and then it would be great with less. Yeah, I think great with less lethality could be interesting, like a single person who is incorruptible and immortal, and who definitely always makes the right decisions. Well, not always makes the right decisions, but almost always makes the right decisions, and can
Has a
just
good
be
track
like,
record.
no, I don't agree with that law. We're not doing it, and you're out of office because I say so. What he did was he Genghis Khan the entire continent, and then pulled a George Washington.
Yep.
And said, make a constitution, and then we're going to follow that constitution for forever. And liberty and freedom is great.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I didn't have to kill so many people to get here, but here we are anyway.
You know, eggs, omelet.
Yeah.
I really like him as an NPC. He's fun.
Yeah.
And when
you got super flirty with him. I'm like, you can't. No, you're like 20 something.
Yeah.
He's like 400 or 500 years old. That ain't working.
Yeah.
I was like,
my character had no clue who he was because Katie forgot about this important NPC. And so we just kind of rolled with it. And we actually came up with a really good reason why she didn't know.
Yeah.
But we're buddies now, and she just thinks he's really cool, and she basically stayed up chatting with him at the bar all night. And it was a very, very much a, you don't know who I am? You don't know who I... Okay, this is cool.
Yeah,
and,
it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. It's a nice, like,
Yeah.
relationship between the characters, because there's no, like, preconceived notion that they started out on. So it's and I would imagine for a character of that level of notoriety and fame, that is not something that he would encounter often.
No, that's for sure
So.
not something he encounters very often. I like the only form of government is benevolent dictatorship. The problem is it only lasts as long as that dictator does, or as long as they remain. There's never been there have been a couple of benevolent dictatorships that were probably as good or nearly as good as a liberal democracy. Liberal democracy is the way to go. It's just corruptible, just like anything is. It's harder to corrupt because there's so many people like working together.
Yeah.
Russian Tsardom, no, thank you. I would not generally I mean, for their time period, maybe, but
Yeah.
even the most benevolent Russian Tsardoms were very much like, you can't criticize the government.
Yeah.
That's treason.
Yeah.
And I think criticism of the government is it's being able to accept criticism is important both for writing and for governing countries.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think we could probably start to wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I need to go lay on.
I can see the look on your face.
Heating
I
pad.
can see the look
Yeah.
But before we go, give it about more. Can you last for like 5 more minutes? We'll see if we have any more questions.
Mhm.
I don't know if we do, but let's see. If anyone has any more questions about the setting, about the games that have been running, just put Cats in charge of everything. Well, I don't know.
I mean, I
Do you
don't know
think
that it would be
Furlos would be?
worse.
You think Furlos would be a good leader? What an int calls treason. I don't know.
Oh, treason.
Treason.
Buzz!
Oh man, more subs.
Thank you! Buzz is out of control with
That
the
is crazy.
the
I
gifting
love
of
that.
subs, and I'm very grateful. Thank you, Buzz. We appreciate you.
We do.
It's real nice to be able to so early on start supporting the financial investment that's
Right,
been
covering
put
our
into
costs.
this. So
Yeah.
we genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh God, why me?
If nobody else has any other questions, I think we should let Katie probably lay down and recover back strength.
Tomorrow will be fun. It's great. It's fine. Everything's good.
Yeah. Also, yeah, you probably should rest specifically for the fact that you have work. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, it's been a more gifted subs. Fuel ish.
Second hype train. Oh, we hit our goal. Holy crap! Thank you.
I don't know what any of these terms mean, but they sound
Okay.
important.
Hype train, amazing. Thank you. The hype train is basically when you get bits or subs that come in from multiple people over a specific amount of time, and it can create the ability for people in channel to get a new emote from the hype train. So we
nice.
appreciate it. As far as the goal, that's a background thing that Twitch automatically does. It's not something we set. It's just you get certain features when you hit different milestones, and one of them is for Frog in a Wizard Hat. Frog in a Wizard Hat is currently waiting for approval from Twitch. I think it'll go into effect after we go offline, but you can get new features and stuff. Like the number of followers we have gave us a lot of emote slots, and we genuinely appreciate it.
What we can do is we can wait the 3.5 or so minutes until this hype train timer
Sure.
runs down.
Yeah. I would like to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Why?
More emotes. Those are
More
important.
emotes.
Those are important, I'm told.
Billith, I will let you know because I have an idea for a couple that we need done. So I will get a hold of you and we will discuss that. Oh yeah, the frog in the this is the bee frog in a wizard hat. Because it was created by Billith, so I put a bee in its name. And we've got a snonky emote now. Yay! Snonky.
Billith also made our logo.
Oh, yep. Billith also made our logo, and there is a logo emote that is pending, and the other frog in a wizard hat is the one that Buzz used. That's our other frog in a wizard hat.
See it.
We have frogs and wizards hats. That's what we do here. We frog and wizard hats.
Frog and wizard hats. God, I've got to figure out. I've got to give Frog and a Wizard Hat people that he cares about, and then I've got to rip them away.
I think you need to like give him the biggest family that are scattered all over the world, and each of them wears a different style hat and has a different role in life based on their hat.
That could be fun.
I think that would be amazing.
His brother could be Frog in a tinfoil hat for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this.
I do
love
like
this
that.
idea.
Yeah. Because while we're waiting a little bit here, I will say one of my primary tactics in DMing is I'll notice a lot of DMs will be like, "Aha, you love this character. I've killed this character."
Yeah.
I don't do that as much as I go, "Aha, you love this character. I'm going to kill everyone this character loves."
Yeah.
So you guys get to experience how hurt he is. Or
Which
he or she
honestly is worse when you're adventurers because you're like, I could have prevented this if I was there. Buzz, thank you again. In
Bit
Frog we
Skull.
trust.
Oh wow, yeah.
Big
Oh,
thank
so-
you for Buzz, Fuel, the Lurking Rider. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for the gifted subs. We appreciate
You guys
it.
really are awesome. That's extremely great. And we're 68% of our way to whatever this goal is.
Yeah, I don't know what the next one is. It's
But
yeah.
it is worse, but also I feel like it's more engaging for the players because
yeah.
then the players have something to care about. Like if
Yeah.
you I'm not saying you don't kill characters that the players are like and stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for that. But if that's your default, then your players are going to very shortly learn not to care about characters too much, I
Yep.
feel.
It's the same thing as if all of your lovable characters turn out to be bad. Like, you
That's
can
true.
do it, but if you make all of them that way, the characters are not going to trust any NPCs.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of those things that's like I've decided a long time ago. Most of the time, I just put the characters that the players love through some shit,
Yeah.
and then like put them in front. Oop, we received a level 1 hype train
Yay!
emote. Numbers.
Yay! Thank you for the new emote, guys. Y'all are awesome.
Awesome.
Because we're keeping Katie here. That's funny.
That's fair.
I
All right.
appreciate
Well,
it.
in that case, I think it would be a good time for us to take off.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We're gonna keep doing this so our first Sundays of the month, they're gonna be our off weeks. And we're just gonna keep doing these where I come in with some players and we do a retrospective over how the games went. I feel like it's a good idea to keep doing something every something has happened.
We
I feel
hit
like
a bits goal. We've hit 1,000 bits already.
Nice.
Thank you. Y'all. Thank you.
And we're just going to keep doing this. And if you have questions like that come up during a session where you're watching, both I guess as players and as audience members, maybe write them down and wait for the bonus action episode to come up and ask them in chat, and I will do my best to answer them for you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not a huge. I'll try. I try to respect people's opinions on spoilers and stuff, but I don't personally believe that they matter all that much. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
I mean, this is a recap, so
It is, yeah.
yeah.
But going into like the background, like if somebody asks why did this happen, there may be a spoilery reason for it. If I can
see what
find
you're
a way,
saying. Okay.
if I can find a way to answer that question, I'll probably do it
Yeah.
if I can do it in a way that won't be disruptive. So don't be afraid to ask questions like that. And with that said, let's get out of here.
Okay. Hang on.
Peace out.
I'm gonna roll the credits from the
I
episode
don't-
to see if they work now.
Hold on. I was going to say, I don't have an outro yet. So don't die.
Bye, y'all.